Chapter 481. On the 12th of April, the sky was blue and the sun had not yet risen, but the village in the valley was already bustling with activity. Many people were busy. Some chefs began to slaughter pigs and sheep, and some young people in the village went to the fields to pick the freshest vegetables and fruits. In the Yang family, it was even more crowded. The most conspicuous ones were a few groomsmen wearing black robes with golden sleeves and collars. Not only were there Lan Caocai, Fu Jun, Guozi, Jining Ming, Yongqing, and others, but there was also a familiar face. Chen Yijie. This big star turned down a lot of jobs to attend Yang Yi's wedding. Everyone listened to me. Our groomsmen are here to support our brother Yang. Remember these words. Remember to comb your hair, wear sunglasses, and fill your pockets. Bridesmaids can't stop you. Lan Caocai was in high spirits as he gave out thick red packets while directing the groomsmen. Of course, these words also made everyone laugh. Even Chen Yijie was laughing so hard that he leaned against a tree. Yang Yi finally came out. He usually didn't like to wear makeup, but today he carefully took care of his hair. He used gel to harden it, and every strand of hair was separated very clearly. His whole person looked particularly bright and sunny. Wow! His appearance caused a burst of exclamations from his brothers. It was a little exaggerated, but it really made people's eyes light up. Handsome. Big brother Yang, your clothes are really too handsome. Guozi ran over and pulled Yang Yi's wedding dress while making a big fuss. Isn't that right? The upper part of his body was the same style as the ancient emperor's. It was an amaranth color, embroidered with a golden five-clawed golden dragon and golden auspicious clouds. Underneath he wore a long robe made of red silk. There was not a single crease on the hem. The tall Yang Yi wore it with an imposing aura. It was as if an emperor had arrived. Although no one took the emperor seriously now, this outfit was still incomparably cool. Lan Caocai also asked enviously, "Where did you buy this outfit?" "My mother-in-law designed it herself and asked the tailor to make it," Yang Yi explained with a smile. This answer caused the crowd to click their tongues again, expressing their envy, jealousy, and hatred. The preparations are more or less done. Let's set off now. Don't come back too late. Everyone will be starving at noon, Yongqing suggested. Thus, everyone got into Yang Yi's tyrant and drove out of the village. The roads in the village had not been completely repaired, so it was not easy for the cars to turn around. Therefore, the wedding cars were temporarily parked at the entrance of the village. Of course, this was to avoid trouble. When the time came to pick up the bride, no matter how difficult it was, all the wedding cars had to be driven to the house. Even if they had to block the path at the door, they still had to go through the procedures. Tyrant couldn't seat too many people. A few people made do by standing on the trunk, but it only took a while. Soon they arrived at the entrance of the village. The motorcade was spectacular. Other than the 12 luxury cars that cost at least 500,000 renminbi, there were also 3 luxury cars that Lan Caocai had asked his company's chauffeur to drive over. They were all sponsored luxury cars. Including Yang Yi's tyrant, there were a total of 16 cars. Originally, Lan Caocai had wanted to bring a few more cars over, including his own stretch limousine. But unfortunately, the luxury cars in his garage were all supercars. No matter if it was a supercar or a stretch limousine, on the roads in Yang Yi's hometown, they might collapse halfway. So he could only bring 3 off-road luxury cars. But even so, the price of each car was at least 10 million renminbi. Yang Yi did not ask the exact price, but compared to the Lamborghini and Bugatti Veyron from Yang Yi's previous life, these were all luxury cars. Yang Yi's tyrant was driven in front by someone else. Wang Chao and the rest were in the back. They were in charge of filming the entire wedding. "Is everyone ready?" Lan Caocai asked loudly. "We're ready." The groomsmen all waved their hands valiantly as they shouted, "Boss Yang Yi, we are all ready." Lan Caocai deliberately reported to Yang Yi, "Then let's go." Yang Yi's heart had already flown over. He couldn't wait to wave his hand. It had already been arranged. Yang Yi got into the most expensive luxury car and followed the photographer in the front. Behind them, each groomsman got into a car. The remaining cars were reserved for the guests of the bride's party. Lan Caocai got into the car behind Yang Yi. In the car, Lan Xian, who was wearing a princess dress, was already waiting. She was looking forward to meeting Shishi. She hadn't seen her friend in a long time. After a few honks, the long line of cars finally set off. At the same time, at the junction of Pagua County, a man carrying a camera bag was hailing a taxi. "Sir, are you going to Wadayaku Village?" "Yes, Wadayaku Village in Jui Town." Not every taxi was willing to go to such a remote place, but fortunately, he was willing to pay enough fare. After asking for a while, he finally got into a taxi. The driver drove and said to him in Mandarin with a strong local accent, "Wadayaku Village, that village is very remote. You don't look like a local. What are you going there for?" "Oh, to attend a friend's wedding." The man pushed his glasses and smiled at the driver. "Attending a wedding, that's troublesome." The driver's nagging didn't enter LVU's mind. He was looking ahead and secretly thinking about this mission. Yes, this man was Teacher Ko LVU. No, now the title Teacher Ko had become history, and it had nothing to do with LVU. After LVU accepted the incorporation of Backwave Technology Company, he set up his own studio with their funding. However, the staff of the studio was still slowly being selected. At present, he was the only one who was alone. Of course, LVU didn't use his real name. He followed the advice of the big boss behind Backwave Technology and gave himself a new stage name, Zhuazi. That was the meaning of the outstanding paparazzi. The microbroadcasting V he opened was called Zhuazi August 8th. Of course, the latter part of the name, August 8th, didn't refer to his birthday on August 18th, but the meaning of gossip. With the financial support, LVU was really like what Backwave advocated when they incorporated him. He was ambitious towards the goal of being the #1 paparazzi in China. However, the beginning was difficult. LVU used the small gossip that he had previously grasped and had not sold to gain tens of thousands of fans. But that was far from enough. Fortunately, Backwave sent him warmth at this time. They provided LVU with information about Yang Yi and Murphy's wedding and gave LVU the specific address. "Why? Didn't we say not to do any more gossip related to Murphy and Yang Yi?" LVU expressed his confusion. Backwave's contact person gave him the answer. "Because this is Murphy and Yang Yi's side who took the initiative to expose it. There is no need to hide it. And you just happen to lack enough big gossip to attract attention. We don't let the fertile water flow into the fields of others, so we let you report it." Obviously, this was Yang Yi's idea. However, Yang Yi had discussed it with Murphy, and Murphy also agreed with Yang Yi's decision. Instead of waiting for the media to expose and hype, it was better for them to take the initiative to let their own people release it and correctly guide public opinion. LVU took out an exquisite invitation letter from his bag and pondered carefully. The person behind the Backwave should be inextricably linked to Murphy and this Yang Yi. LVU looked at his name on the invitation and thought secretly. It was impossible to be so powerful. LVU's mind appeared the man with the sharp eyes, the man who made him panic. He faintly felt that this person was not simple. Or is it Yang Yi? Chapter 482. Ren Kangol was the county magistrate of Pagua County. Coincidentally, he was going to Jui Town for an inspection today. Sitting in the car, Ren Kangol, who was taking a nap, suddenly had a smoking addiction. He opened his eyes and said, "Xiao Wang, open the window. I want to smoke." While he was smoking, the sound of firecrackers suddenly came from the front. Ren Kangol looked ahead and saw a tall pickup truck at the end of a small hill. "County Magistrate Ren, I don't know which family in the nearby village is getting married," Xiao Wang explained. He asked Ren Kangol to throw away the cigarette butt, and then closed the window. The smell of firecrackers was blocked, but Ren Kangol could still see through the window. The pickup truck was just the beginning. Then, Ren Kangol was stunned to see super luxury cars crossing the small hill and appearing in front of him. Ren Kangol could not find a single one of these famous luxury cars in a poor place like Pagua County. But today he saw 3 of them at once. Of course, the 4 cars in front had foreign license plates, but the visual impact was extremely strong. The cars in the back were normal, but when Ren Kangol brushed past them, the long line of cars still made Ren Kangol, the county magistrate, a little dizzy. Wasn't this a little too extravagant? When the bridal procession passed by, Xiao Wang suddenly muttered, 16 cars. It turned out that he had silently counted just now, but Ren Kangol did not count. He was just shocked by the long line of cars. Xiao Wang, who do you think is getting married and making such a big scene? Ren Kangol asked as he looked at the cars driving toward the county in the rearview mirror. Xiao Wang shook his head honestly and said, I don't know, but it should be someone from Zhui Town, because this direction could only be from Zhui Town. But I have never heard of any rich people in Zhui Town. Indeed, there were none. Otherwise, why would Zhui Town still be poor? County Magistrate Ren, do you want to turn back and ask? Xiao Wang saw that Ren Kangol was very interested, so he slowed down the car and asked, No, we have other tasks, and this is someone's big day. Ren Kangol waved his hand. When we reach Zhui Town, ask someone. Putting county head Ren side aside, the bridal procession finally arrived at the county after nearly 2 hours of driving. Although there were no more firecrackers, the long line of luxury cars still attracted the attention of many people in the county. People stood by the roadside and looked at the convoy. They were pointing at it and discussing something. However, the convoy did not care. They drove directly to the hotel. Only Tyrant and the 3 luxury cars stopped at the entrance. The other cars could not stop, so they lined up in a long line, almost surrounding the entire hotel. After getting out of the car, Yang Yi was surrounded by his groomsmen and walked into the hotel. Following them were Wang Chao, who was carrying a camera on his shoulder, and Zhu Liang, who was holding a digital video camera. The 2 of them were going to film the whole process today. Other than them, there were also Yang Huan, Ding Xiang, and other girls. They carried small baskets and smilingly handed out wedding candies to the people they met on the way, receiving congratulations and blessings in return. When they arrived at the floor where Murphy was, they were no longer being watched. Only Yang Yi and the groomsmen were left in the corridor. Knock, knock, knock. Yang Yi knocked on the door. However, the door did not open, and there was no reaction at all. Yang Yi could already hear the rustling sounds inside and Mo Xiaowan proudly saying, Ignore him. Yang Yi could only continue knocking. After a while, the door finally opened a crack. Mo Xiaowan and her bridesmaids squeezed through the crack and looked out. Mo Xiaowan was even more shrewish as she shouted, What are you doing? It's so early in the morning. It's so noisy. We are here to pick up the bride. Guozi and the others behind laughed. Pick up the bride? Is the bride supposed to be picked up by you so casually? Mo Xiaowan shouted. They had no choice but to stuff red packets. One after another, large red packets were taken out from the groomsmen's pockets and stuffed through the crack in the door. The amount of red packets prepared was indeed sufficient. The bridesmaids inside exclaimed, Can I go in to pick up the bride now? Yang Yi smiled helplessly. Not yet. However, Mo Xiaowan opened the door and revealed the group of bridesmaids. They were all wearing the same pink ancient dress, just like Xiao Ai, which also made people's eyes light up. Usually they didn't realize that she was so beautiful. There was another test. Mo Xiaowan stood in front with an imposing manner. She said, The groom has to perform a performance. If we are satisfied, we can pick up the bride. There was such a thing? Fortunately, Yang Yi was also prepared. He shouted to the back, Someone bring me my guitar. He really did bring his guitar. A few people passed it around, and the guitar was delivered to Yang Yi. He gently strummed the strings and then sang. The girl opposite, look over here, look over here, look over here, look over here. The performance here is very exciting. Please don't pretend to ignore it. There was such a thing? Chen Yijie, who was watching from behind, laughed happily. If Yang Yi had not prepared the guitar, he would have thought that Yang Yi improvised the song on the spot. However, it was indeed improvised because it did not have a particularly complicated melody or exquisite lyrics. It was just very interesting, whether it was singing or listening. The bridesmaids were also very happy. I beg you to throw a flirtatious look over here, coax me, make me happy. The lonely boys fly swatter, swatter left, swatter right. These lyrics were too interesting. Mo Xiaowan laughed until she bent over and needed Xiao Ai to support her. When Yang Yi finished singing, the girl opposite, look over here. They also made way and did not continue to make things difficult for Yang Yi. Although it was fun to make things difficult for the groom, They were also cultured people. They knew that if they did not stop, it would only be annoying. Yang Yi walked in happily and saw Murphy sitting by the bed with a smile. Murphy, who had already dressed up, was wearing a phoenix dress. It was also a top and a skirt, but Murphy's phoenix dress could be said to be exquisite. Every part of it was embroidered with exquisite phoenixes, flowers, and other patterns. The background color was elegant, and although the embroidery was colorful, it was not too gaudy. It also looked delicate and beautiful with a noble air. Yang Yi was just about to walk over to pick up his bride when he was intercepted by Xi. The little girl was pulled back by several bridesmaids just now to prevent her from shouting. Now she could not wait to rush over and plunge into her father's arms. Xi was also wearing a traditional Chinese dress. She had a pink top and a red skirt, and her hair was tied up in an ancient style. She looked like a little fairy from ancient times. She was cute and beautiful. Yang Yi picked up his daughter. The little girl said excitedly, "Papa, I heard you singing just now. You're wearing a good dress today." Yang Yi smiled and scratched his daughter's little nose. Xi smiled happily and said coyly, "I think so too. I like it very much." Yang Yi handed Xi to Imo Shaowan. Then he walked to the bedside and looked at Murphy with tenderness in his eyes. He said softly, "Murphy, you are so beautiful today. The dress is beautiful or the person is beautiful?" Murphy touched the phoenix dress and asked with a smile. "The dress is beautiful, but the person is as beautiful as a fairy," Yang Yi said. Behind them, the bridesmaids screamed exaggeratedly. They did it on purpose. Imo Shaowan even shouted, "That's so disgusting." After this, the pink atmosphere between Yang Yi and Murphy was diluted. Murphy and Yang Yi also looked at each other and smiled. Yang Yi bent down and carried Murphy in his arms. He only had eyes for Murphy. Murphy also hugged his neck. The two of them looked at each other, full of love. "Let's go. We can't be too late. It will be noon if we rush back," Yang Yi said softly. "Okay." Murphy nodded. Chapter 483. Everyone went downstairs. Yang Yi and Murphy first sent Imo Henian and Zhou Mingyu to the car. Although according to the rules, Murphy should be crying with her parents at this time, they couldn't leave them alone in the county. Murphy couldn't cry about such a happy occasion. So the rules were slightly changed. On the other side, she saw Lan Xian. Lan Xian couldn't wait in the car. When she saw she couldn't wait to open the car door and jump out. Xian air. The two girls jumped and hugged each other excitedly. They were wearing different styles of dresses. One was a Han Dynasty dress, while the other was a princess dress, but they were both very cute. I missed you so much. You haven't been to kindergarten for a long time." Lan Xian's excitement eased a little. She pouted and said unhappily, "I was at Grandpa's house. I couldn't go back." She shook Lan Xian's hand and said, "Xian air, don't be sad. I have a puppy. I call it Steamed Bun. It's a super cute puppy. It's only this big." "Really? I've never seen such a small puppy. My puppies are super big." Lan Xian said happily, "Can you show me your puppy?" "Sure, but it lives with my papa. You can only see it when we go back." The two girls chatted happily. They were stuck together and couldn't be separated. "I want to sit with Cici." When Lan Zhou's Kai Lai called for Lan Xian to get into the car, she shouted unwillingly, "I also want to sit with Xian air." She held Lan Xian's arm and looked at Lan Hao Kai eagerly. Yang Yi came over and saw Lan Hao Kai, who was anxious to scold Lan Xian. He stopped him and said with a smile, "It's okay. Let them sit together. The car is big anyway." The first car was a cross-country luxury car. Yang Yi and Murphy sat together, and then Xi and Lan Xian sat in the row with their parents. There was enough space so it wasn't too crowded. On the contrary, the two girls sang the nursery rhymes they learned in kindergarten along the way. One song after another, the atmosphere in the car was very cheerful. It took almost 2 hours for the bridal procession to return to the village. At this moment, the village was very lively. Dozens of banquet tables were set up in the martial arts field. However, there was only wine on the tables for the time being. The busy chefs were stacking and covering the hot and cold dishes. When it was time to start, they would put them on the table. The villagers also joined in the fun. They gathered near Yang Yi's house and smiled as they watched the luxury cars carefully drive over. "The bride is here," someone shouted. In the laughter, Yang Yi held Murphy's hand and got out of the car. At this time, Mo Fei was still not very obvious. She was tall, slim, beautiful and elegant. Her clothes were elegant and graceful, and her skin was fair, but there was a touch of blush on her face. It had to be said that people still needed to rely on beautiful makeup and clothes to set off. Today, Murphy stunned the surrounding villagers. They exclaimed and talked about her. "Tai Zi's wife is amazing. She's prettier than a fairy. I think those big stars on TV can't compare to her. Didn't they say that Tai Zi's wife is a big star?" At the entrance of the wedding, Murphy had to step over the brazier. Although it was not difficult, Yang Yi still held Murphy's hand and carefully helped her walk over. After entering the door, Yang Huan, who had been prepared, lit the firecrackers in the yard. The long firecrackers crackled, and the atmosphere became very lively. "I'm scared." The two girls who followed them and were scared. She covered her ears and squeezed into Lan Xiaokai's arms with Lan Xian. In the arms of the fat uncle, Shi and Lan Xian covered their ears and screamed. At the same time, they looked at each other and smiled. It was hard to tell if they were really scared. In the main hall, the smoke and red candles were burning. The open space was covered with a red carpet. It looked very red. At first glance, this wedding looked very retro. In the middle of the square table, there were 2 armchairs on each side. There was originally 1 on each side, but now they were added. The groom's parents, Yang Chonggue and Dong Yue, sat on the left. Mo Henian and Zhou Mingyu were also in their seats. They sat on the armchairs on the right. The relatives and friends of the 2 families were all present. The important relatives sat on the chairs on both sides. The groomsmen and bridesmaids did not have such good treatment. They stood behind the chairs on both sides. However, they stood high and could see further. It was a good view. At this time Dong Qi, who was acting as the host, shouted, "The groom, please take your seat." Yang Yi stood up and walked to Murphy. "The groom, please bow." Yang Yi cupped his hands and invited Murphy to bow like he had learned before. Murphy also stood up and shyly placed her right hand on Yang Yi's left hand. The bride and groom are in position. The 2 of them walked in. After another tedious ceremony, it was finally time for the wedding ceremony. Hand in hand, the 2 little girls standing at the side watched with great interest. She blinked her big eyes and watched without missing a single detail. Although she did not understand the meaning of her parents doing this ceremony, she still found it very interesting. The village head shouted, "First bow to heaven and earth." Then, her parents bowed to the tablets on the table in unison. The village head shouted again, "Second bow to your parents." Cece then saw her father and mother bowing to her grandparents together. Husband and wife bow to each other. The village head's tone was very interesting. It was rhythmic and dragged out. It was like singing. She could not help but move her mouth as if she was learning. Of course, what was more interesting was that Yang Yi and Murphy were facing each other and bowing to each other. Cece couldn't understand the sacredness of the ceremony at this moment, but when Murphy raised his head, his eyes were already flowing like spring water. Looking at Yang Yi, the taste of happiness seemed to be overflowing. "Send them to the bridal chamber." Dong Qi shouted again. Yang Yi and Murphy stood side by side in the crowd's laughter. Murphy's face was so red that even her ears were dyed with the color of rouge. Yang Yi also waved his hand in embarrassment and said, "There's no need for that, right? There's no need to send them to the bridal chamber. We just need to go through the process. The wedding ceremony is about to end here. In-law, why don't you say a few words first?" Yang Chongui spoke up to help Yang Yi and Mo Henian out of their predicament. He then turned to look at Mo Henian and said. Mo Henian nodded. Everyone quieted down. Yang Yi and Murphy also stood in front of him holding hands and listened. Yang Yi, in fact, when I first rushed back to China, I was very reluctant to hand Mo Fei over to you, because there were many misunderstandings before. You should be able to understand my feelings as a father. Mo Henian said. Murphy is a kind child. To put it bluntly, she is naive. I've been her father for more than 30 years, and I've always been worried that she would be cheated. Murphy's eyes were glistening with tears. Although it was not very emotional, it was difficult to control some emotions on the occasion of a wedding. At the side, Yang-yi hurriedly nodded. Actually, Emo Hinian had already put it very tactfully. Back then he had been shouting about beating and killing. I was also worried that she would meet a bad man, so I was very wary of you. I also made a lot of tests for you. Although my attitude towards you later was not good, that was only because I couldn't change. However, after getting to know you for a long time, I saw that you were smart and capable, you were responsible for your family, you cared about your children, and you were considerate and caring towards Murphy. Emo Hinian stood up. He walked over and took Murphy's hand. He gently placed it on Yang Yi's hand and said, "Finally, today, I also made an important decision. I'm entrusting Murphy to you. I hope that you can take over from me. In the future, you can continue to take care of her, protect her, and cherish her for the rest of her life. Can you do it?" "Papa." Murphy choked. She was so moved that her eyes were brimming with tears. "Yes," Yang Yi said loudly and firmly, as if he was answering the chief's question in the army. "Good, good." Emo Hinian showed a kind smile to Yang Yi for the first time. He patted Yang Yi's shoulder and also patted Murphy's shoulder. He nodded with gratification. "Old Yang, it's your turn." Emo Hinian turned around and sat down. He smiled and nodded to Yang Chongui. "I'll just say a few simple words." Yang Chongui raised 2 fingers. "First, Yang Yi, you brat, listen up. If you don't treat Murphy well, don't blame me for asking you to apologize in front of your ancestors." Yang Chongui said somewhat like a bandit. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded. "Second," Yang Chongui paused and shouted, "the wedding ceremony is over. What are you waiting for? Let's go to the martial arts arena to drink. My son's big day. Everyone should be lively." It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Many people were so hungry that their chests were sticking to their backs. They were waiting for Yang Chongui to say these words. In a sea of laughter, the crowd crowded around Yang Yi and Murphy, the newlyweds, and rushed toward the banquet. Chapter 484. Other than the banquet, there was also a small stage and sound equipment in the arena, which had been delivered together with the hotel that Yang Yi had booked. Of course, they were not part of the banquet, but they had been rented with some extra money. At this moment, Jin Yingming had transformed into a tuner, in another sense. He was in charge of adjusting the equipment, and then connecting it to the computer he had brought with him. He had already prepared all kinds of background music suitable for the wedding venue, and played it with different atmospheres. While the villagers, Yang Yi and Murphy's relatives and friends were sitting down at the table, talking and laughing, the music on the stage suddenly stopped. Everybody was a bit uncomfortable, but suddenly, a voice came from the sound equipment. "Dear villagers, relatives, and friends of the newlyweds, how are you?" This amusing voice attracted everyone's attention, including the villagers who couldn't wait to unscrew the wine and drinks on the table and pour them out. They also stopped drinking and looked curiously at the stage. Guozi was standing on the stage with a microphone in his hand. Off the stage, Yang Huan chuckled and said to Ding Xiang next to her, "He's fooling around again." Ding Xiang, however, shook her head and said to Yang Huan, "No, Xiao Guo is today's host." Hundreds of pairs of eyes were looking at Guozi, but he was not scared at all. He smiled freely and said, "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Guozi. I am Yang Yi's buddy and the host of today's banquet. Here, I would first like to sincerely offer my blessings to the newlyweds today, Yang Yi and Mo Fei. Yang Yi is the lyrics and Mo Fei is the music. When the two of you are together, it will be a harmonious song made in heaven." Great. The blessing was very unique. The villagers did not quite understand it, but they liked to join in the fun. Cheered by Mu Chang'an, Li Shupo, and the other young people, they all applauded. However, the next moment, Guozi chuckled and said, "However, due to time constraints, we didn't disturb the bridal chamber today. Isn't it a little too easy for us newlyweds?" That's right. Even Chen Yijie, a big star, joined in the fun. Everyone knows that our sister Murphy is a famous singer, And brother Yang Yi is also a great talent who can write and sing. To tell you the truth, if you mention brother Murphy and sister Murphy's names outside, everyone will give you a thumbs up. Guazi gave a thumbs up and said exaggeratedly, "So I suggest that they at least perform for us today. This request is not difficult. Those who agree with my suggestion, please give them a round of applause." Under Guazi's instigation, the villagers all started to cheer and clap. Some of Murphy's relatives came from Harbor City, so they were not used to it. But now they were infected by the lively atmosphere, so they also laughed and applauded. One of Zhou Mingyu's good friends for many years held Zhou Mingyu's hand and asked with a smile, "Fei Fei, are you going to perform for the wedding?" Zhou Mingyu smiled and said, "I don't know. Young people like to play. Let them be." This was originally prepared. Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled. Then, under the cheers of everyone, they stood up from the main table and walked to the stage hand in hand. There was still enough microphone. Guazi handed it over and asked with a smile, "Brother Yang, I want to ask, what are you going to perform for everyone now?" "Sing a song." Murphy looked at Yang Yi and let Yang Yi answer. "What is the name of the song? I have to see if there is an accompaniment. If there is no accompaniment, it will be troublesome," Guazi said exaggeratedly. "The name of the song is Today You Will Marry Me. You don't have to worry about the accompaniment. I have already brought it." When Yang Yi said the name of the song, his eyes were looking at Murphy, and then he smiled and said to Guazi, "Is it? The name of the song is Today Murphy Will Marry Yang Yi. Well, I think it's great." Guazi's words caused another burst of laughter under the stage. "It's great." Shishi chuckled under the stage, and also imitated Guazi's tone. She and Lan Xian were sitting side by side, and both of them were swaying from side to side as they laughed heartily. "The name of the song is Today You Will Marry Me. Of course, what you said is not wrong." Yang Yi also couldn't help but laugh. Guazi's performance on the spot surprised him. "Then I'll ask one more question. Sister Murphy, before today, I have never heard the name of the song you sang. So is this a new song?" Guazi asked. Murphy smiled. She raised the microphone and said, "Yes, it's a new song." "Oh, that's great. I didn't expect to hear a new song from Sister Murphy and Brother Yang today. I'm very honored. Well, let's not talk about it anymore. Music." Guazi twisted a handsome posture, snapped his fingers, and then jumped off the stage with a smile. The beautiful prelude of the harmonica came from the sound system. Although the sound effect was very ordinary, the light and romantic melody made people feel that their blood began to be happy, and they couldn't help but twist with the music. Hearing that Yang Yi and Murphy brought a new song, Chen Yijie was the most interested. He didn't get any news before, so he was very surprised to hear it now. But it's a good thing to listen to a new song. What's more, it's Yang Yi's new work. It's definitely worth looking forward to. Yang Yi on the stage took the lead and raised the microphone. After the prelude drum beat entered the beat, he began to sing. "The flowers bloom in spring, taking away the sadness of winter. The breeze blows the romantic breath." Listening to Yang Yi sing the first sentence, Chen Yijie couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He looked at the tall Yang Yi on the stage with some surprise. There were too many surprises. First of all, Yang Yi's voice. He could actually switch to a relatively clear and pleasant falsetto voice, and sang very freely. If Chen Yijie wasn't too familiar with Yang Yi's original magnetic voice, he would have thought that Yang Yi's original voice was like this. Next was the style of the song. Originally, when listening to the prelude, Chen Yijie already had a feeling. After listening to Yang Yi sing the first sentence, Chen Yijie confirmed it. This song was not the same as the songs that Yang Yi had written before. It had a bit of jazz and rock flavor. The rhythm of the music was also very bouncy like rock, making people want to sway along. But what surprised Chen Yijie even more was that the melody of this song was very simple, and the difficulty of singing it was completely incomparable to the songs that he had written for himself and Murphy. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a drooling song. Of course, Chen Yijie wouldn't look at a drooling song with prejudice. On the contrary, after making a judgment, he still calmed down and listened carefully to Yang Yi's song. Chapter 485. At the banquet, there were people like Chen Yijie who had a higher level of appreciation for songs, such as Guozi, Linmu and Zhou Mingyu, and some of her friends. Yang Huan, who used to be in the entertainment industry and had even taken some vocal music lessons, could also tell the uniqueness of this song. After all, most of the people present were villagers from Wadayaku village, who did not understand music. They only judged music in two ways: good or bad. The song that Yang Yi sang was catchy and had a simple melody. The lyrics were also relatively straightforward. There was no need for rhetoric or symbolism, unlike Listen to the Sea or Carefree Lament, which people could not understand the meaning of the lyrics. Therefore, it was naturally classified as a good song by the villagers. Every love song is suddenly full of meaning, and I suddenly see you at this moment. Yang Yi pointed at Murphy. Just like the song, he was very lively, playful, and made people feel that he was quite amiable. Murphy also raised the microphone and sang sweetly. The fragrance of spring flowers takes away the coldness of winter, and the breeze blows away the unexpected love. Murphy's voice also surprised Chen Yijie and the others, because it was not like the original Murphy at all. It was as if she had taken off all the armor given by her singing skills. Her voice was very pure, leaving only sweetness and cheerfulness. Her sweet voice was not faked, and her cheerful mood was not faked with singing skills. It was completely a manifestation of her mood at the moment. However, Zhou Mingyu's surprise was not the same as Chen Yijie's. She was surprised with a hint of joy. No one was more familiar with Murphy's voice than her mother. Zhou Mingyu remembered that when Murphy debuted in Harbor City, her voice was also light, sweet, and dreamy. However, after experiencing setbacks, Murphy's character became introverted. Her voice, like the layer of indifference that she protected herself, became mature and quiet, and her emotions were also covered in her voice. After more than 10 years, how could Zhou Mingyu not be happy to hear her daughter's heartfelt joy again? She glanced at Yang Yi, who was standing beside her on the stage. As a mother, Zhou Mingyu was relieved that Murphy had met a man who could make her let go of her coldness and live happily. Good. Cheers came from below the stage, which was not very appropriate. This was the first time that the villagers had heard Murphy sing. When they heard that Taizi's wife was a big star, they didn't dare to believe it. Now that they heard her sing, they believed it. It was just nice to listen to. I suddenly fell in love with you at this moment. Listen to me. Murphy sang sweetly. Suddenly, she raised her voice. Yang Yi also raised his microphone and held hands with Murphy. They looked at each other and sang, hand in hand, come with me and create a happy life. Yesterday was too late, tomorrow will be a pity. Marry me today, okay? Below the stage, Yang Huan held Ding Xiang's arm and shook her head. She mumbled, Ayaya, this is so sweet. This song is so sweet. Isn't it? Seeing Yang Yi and Mo Fei looking at each other with a smile and singing such a sweet love song, the single people could be said to have suffered a huge blow. Mo Xiaowan looked at Xiao Ai pitifully and complained, what should I do? Xiao Ai, after hearing this song, I suddenly want to get married. I want to get married too. Xiao Ai looked at Yang Yi and Mo Fei, who were wearing wedding dresses on the stage, and her eyes were also inexplicably filled with tears of gratitude. However, Chen Yijie was still thinking about the deep love between Yang Yi and Murphy. He calmly savored the subtlety of the lyrics of this song. After carefully studying it, it was indeed very interesting. Yesterday was too late, tomorrow will be a pity. Marry me today, okay? Looking at the lyrics, although it seemed simple, it used the comparison between yesterday and tomorrow to express the urgency of wanting to marry his lover today. The first line was similar to, I didn't have time to participate in your past, and tomorrow will be a pity, used an exaggerated tone to express the emotions expressed. Chen Yijie was enraptured, but not long after, Yang Yi gave him another surprise. Yang Yi and Murphy sang a duet again. After singing a new verse, Yang Yi suddenly started to shake his hands rhythmically. This is... Chen Yijie opened his mouth. He didn't hear wrongly. Yang Yi then used this beat to start singing a rap song. Crackle, listen to the sound of firecrackers. We witness in front of our parents and friends. This man and woman are going to get married now. Chunijia was not the only one who was shocked. Guazi and other friends who were familiar with Yang Yi were also dumbfounded. They never thought that Yang Yi could also rap. However, they were not wrong. Yang Yi really did not know how to rap. For this verse, he also thought about it with Murphy for a long time to see how to pronounce the words, and where to sing the accent. Don't forget how sacred all this is. Are you willing to be with him through life and death, love him, respect him, comfort him, protect him, and build a happy family together? Are you willing to do this? As if reading a wedding vow, Yang Yi sang it out in a cadence and then paused. Then Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled, and said in unison, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." Then they continued to sing the rest of the song. Seeing them look at each other happily, LVU, who was sitting at the back of the banquet, was also excited to take photos with his camera. Several villagers sitting next to him watched the performance on the stage, and couldn't help but look at his large DSLR. Finally, someone couldn't help but ask, "Are you also here to take photos?" "Yes, I'm with them." LVU pointed to Wang Chao, Zhu Liang, and others who were wandering in the crowd recording and taking photos. "I see. Take a picture for me too." The villager happily put up a peace sign and showed his big yellow teeth. LVU smiled and didn't refuse. He turned the camera and took a picture of him. The photo was quite interesting. Unfortunately, he was not a professional reporter and had no interest. Otherwise, he could submit it and see if he could win a photography competition. "Write me your name, address, and contact information. Later, I'll develop the photo and send it to you." LVU didn't fool the other party. He took out a notebook from his pocket and tore off a piece of paper for the other party to write. "Okay, thank you so much. You people from the big city are so friendly." The villager laughed happily. Finally, the performance on the stage ended. "Nice. Tizi sang well. Your wife also sang well." After the song, the villagers cheered. Looking at their excited clapping, no one knew whether they really thought the song was nice or they were in a hurry to eat. "Thank you for the two newlyweds singing. We won't bother you anymore because after marriage, the real test has just begun." Guazi came up and said, "Then our Yang Yi and Murphy's wedding banquet begins now. Master, please bring the dishes." "Here, I wish the two newlyweds the best of luck again. May the happy song accompany you forever. May your future life still be full of joy and cheerfulness. I wish the two of you love each other and grow old together." In Guazi's nagging voice, the wedding banquet really began. Of course, Yang Yi couldn't stay idle. He took Murphy to toast table by table. Of course, when Yang Yi drank, Murphy used water instead of wine. Everyone knew that the bride was pregnant, so they didn't deliberately ask her to drink. Murphy actually didn't like Yang Yi to drink, but today's situation was special, so she showed mercy. Soon they were full. With Lan Xian, she ran around with the other children in the village. When she accidentally passed by her father, she smelled the smell of alcohol on her father's body. She expressed her strong objection. Chapter 486. Yang Yi and Murphy were toasting to Murphy's relatives. An elder with a red face shouted, "Fill it up, fill it up. How can the bridegroom drink so little?" Yang Yi didn't care. His alcohol tolerance was unfathomable, not to mention that he had another way to stay sober. Therefore, he smiled boldly and nodded to Guazi, who only poured half a glass of wine for himself, and said, "Fill it up. This is Murphy's uncle. I'll drink with him." Cici and Lanxin didn't eat much. They were already full when half of the dishes were served. At this moment, they were also following the other children in the village and jumping around the tables to collect the empty bottles of drinks that the adults had drunk. "Throw it in the trash can, not on the ground," she said timidly to the adult who handed her the bottle. "Not throw it away. I want it. Give it to me and I can sell it for money." The child corrected Shishi's wrong idea loudly. Just then, Shishi passed by her father and smelled the strong smell of alcohol on him. She also heard the conversation between her father and Uncle Gua. How could he drink? Suddenly, the little girl didn't listen. She pulled her father's trousers and shouted, "Papa, you can't drink." Yang Yi didn't care at first. He looked down and saw his daughter's anxious little face. He bent down with a smile, picked up the little girl with one hand, and said, "Are you full? Why don't you play with Xian Air?" Hearing her name, Lon Xian shouted loudly, "Uncle Yang, I'm here." "Well, you go play with Xian Air. Papa is busy. I'll take you home later." Yang Yi wanted to put Shishi down. However, Shishi held her father's neck tightly and refused to come down. She pouted and insisted, "Papa, I don't want you to drink." Murphy had no choice but to help persuade Shishi. She gently patted her daughter's back and comforted her. "It's okay. It's okay for Dad to drink a little today. Today is a little special." No, I don't want Papa to drink. Papa will become smelly." Shishi didn't listen. She shook her head and said unhappily, "Daddy will only drink a little. I won't get drunk." Yang Yi wanted to negotiate with his daughter. However, Shishi reached out her soft little hand and covered her father's mouth. She pouted and said, "You can't drink. You can't drink a little." Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he wasn't like other parents who would scold their children when they saw them being so immature and disobedient. Seeing that Shishi wouldn't budge no matter what he said, he could only smile helplessly at Murphy. In the end, his daughter was concerned about him. Yang Yi felt warm in his heart. "Okay, Dad won't drink. Dad promises you." Yang Yi put the wine glass on the table, then pulled down his daughter's hand and said softly, "Really?" Shishi didn't believe it. "Really?" Yang Yi asked Guazi to change a glass for him. He poured water into the glass and then brought it to Shishi's nose. He smiled and said, "Smell it." "This is water, not wine." Shishi nodded her head suspiciously. However, after getting down from her father's arms, the little girl still didn't want to go away. She followed behind her father and raised her head to look at him, as if she was worried that her father would act shamelessly. "Sorry, uncle, your daughter doesn't allow you to drink. I'll use water instead of wine to toast you. As long as you're happy." Yang Yi didn't go back on his words. He didn't touch the wine on the table again. Instead, he really used water to toast others. After drinking, Yang Yi showed the glass to Shishi and smiled slightly. "Well, you go play with Xian Air." Murphy gently patted her daughter's head and said lovingly. However, Cece shook her little head. Now that she smelled the smell of alcohol on her father's body, it was very difficult for her to feel at ease. While clinging to her mother to hold her, she said very seriously, "I want to see Papa. I can't drink." Lon Xian seemed to understand her little friend. She jumped and followed Shishi. She shouted loudly, "We don't want to play. We want to watch Uncle Yang." She didn't know where she learned this word. Shishi was happy. The little girl smiled and held hands with Lon Xian. She giggled and said, "We are the police. We want to watch Papa." Yang Yi lovingly scratched the little girl's nose and said with a smile, "Well, I'll let you watch. Dad won't drink today." He was a man of his word. While toasting table after table, Yang Yi and Mo Fei still had two little children behind them. He had to explain to these relatives and neighbors why he couldn't drink with an apologetic smile. "There's no other way. My daughter really doesn't allow me to drink. Everyone, let's do it." The rest were basically the other villagers in the village. They didn't dare to force Yang Yi to drink. After all, Yang Yi's status was different now, and he was even willing to fork out money to help them repair the road. Thus, they all smiled and agreed to Yang Yi's suggestion of using water instead of wine. In private, Yang Yi also took the time to pick up Shishi, kissed the little girl's face and said with a smile, "Thank you, Shishi. Because of you, Dad drank a lot less today." Shishi was a little embarrassed by her father's praise. She smiled and twisted in her father's arms. Drinking wine was the most affectionate thing. The water was not intoxicating, but people were intoxicated by themselves. 2/3 of the wedding banquet was over. Yang Yi and Murphy visited table after table and received blessings from table after table. They were tired but happy. Finally, they could take a break, sit back at the main table, and eat some food to fill their stomachs. Murphy couldn't eat too much. She drank a lot of water and was full. Just eat something. Drinking water alone is not nutritious. Yang Yi felt sorry for his wife. He stood up and peeled some fish for Murphy. The big fish was only left with the skeleton. Fortunately, there was still some meat in the belly. At this time, Dong Qi came over with a few people. He smiled and said to Yang Yi, "Yang Yi, let me introduce you. This is our county head, Ren Kangol. County head Ren, this is our town head, Wang Yun." Yang Yi was stunned for a while before he slowly stood up. As he greeted them, he secretly wondered why these two officials came to his wedding. Fortunately, Wang Yun gave him an answer. "It's like this. County head Ren is inspecting the work in our town. When he heard that you were getting married, he came over to take a look." County head Ren held Yang Yi's hand and smiled kindly. "Little Yang Yi is young and promising. I didn't know that there was such a big star in Pegua County. I'm really negligent. It just so happens that I heard that today is your wedding with the big star, Murphy, so I specially came over to give you our blessings. I hope that you and your bride will be united and happy forever." Who didn't know how to say beautiful words? However, Yang Yi didn't smile because of this. He had always been wary of officials. He just smiled faintly and talked to them. However, Yang Yi was overthinking. Ren Kangol really didn't want to do anything to Yang Yi when he came over this time. He just came over to say hello. After all, the fleet of luxury cars was too dazzling, so he didn't dare to neglect them. However, since his parents and officials were already here, he couldn't let them leave with their tails between their legs. Out of politeness, Yang Yi asked them to sit down. On the other hand, Dong Qi was very enthusiastic. He accompanied them throughout the entire process, and even accompanied them to drink. He even asked the chef to send over a few new dishes. He told Ren Kangol about the road construction and development plans in the village. Dong Qi wasn't greedy for credit, and said that it was all thanks to Yang Yi. When Ren Kangol heard that it was Yang Yi who donated money to the village to build roads, he was also shocked. At this moment, he secretly paid more attention to Yang Yi and Wadeaku village. Dong Qi wanted to get more financial support from the county, but it wasn't easy to achieve. Thus, Ren Kangol only expressed that he would help. However, Dong Qi's efforts were still rewarded. After drinking a few glasses of wine, Ren Kangol promised Dong Qi and Yang Yi that he would supervise the relevant departments to complete the coverage of Wadeaku village's telephone and television network as soon as possible. He would also lay down water pipes for Wadeaku village to solve the problem of water and electricity. "You can do it boldly. Don't worry, the county won't hold you back. I hope to see Wadeaku village get rid of the label of poverty as soon as possible." When they were about to leave, Ren Kangol's face was glowing. He took Dong Qi and Yang Yi's hands and said, Chapter 487. On the wedding night, it was supposed to be the wedding night. The bride would be too shy to sing a song. However, that night, Shishi and Lan Xian occupied Yang Yi and Murphy's room. The two girls even stepped on the new bed covered with a red quilt, and played with the little puppy, who was wagging its tail. They even carried Steamed Bun up. Steamed Bun, come over here." Lan Xian spread her arms and looked at the little puppy expectantly. However, Steamed Bun didn't respond to Lan Xian's call. "Xian, look at me." Shishi moved her butt back excitedly, then waved her hand and called, Steamed Bun, Steamed Bun." Steamed Bun wasn't used to his name yet. He drooped his big sad eyes and stood there in a daze for a while. However, he still recognized the voice of the little girl who played with him every day. She seemed to be calling him. He turned his head, looked at Shishi and ran over. The quilt was soft, and Steamed Bun's short legs couldn't stand on it. He fell after running a few steps, but it didn't matter. He got up again and ran over. Burrowing into the warm arms of his little master, the little puppy seemed to have found a nest. He lay down comfortably, and even rested his head on Shishi's palm. "Hee, Xian, look, Steamed Bun is super obedient to me." Shishi was happy and proud to show off her magic to her little friend. "I want to play with Steamed Bun too." Lan Xian looked at the cute and pitiful little puppy. She liked it and squeezed her butt over. Shishi took Lan Xian's hand and taught her how to play with the puppy. For example, she taught her how to pet the puppy's head and chin. "I know how to play with dogs too. We have a big dog at home," Lan Xian said as she stroked Steamed Bun's head. Out of curiosity, she poked Steamed Bun's little black nose. Steamed Bun didn't have any objections to Lan Xian's touch, but his nose was a bit uncomfortable. He gently wagged his tail, raised his front paw, and pressed it against Lan Xian's hand. Then he opened his mouth and sucked on Lan Xian's finger. In reality, Steamed Bun was only licking Lan Xian's little finger. He didn't use his thin, sharp teeth at all. However, Lan Xian, who had never experienced this before, was shocked. She quickly withdrew her hand and shouted anxiously to Shishi. Shishi, your buns are going to eat people. No, Steamed Bun won't eat people. Steamed Bun is very obedient. Shishi had encountered the same problem as Lan Xian before. The little girl hurriedly defended Steamed Bun. At this moment, Yang Yi and Lance Hao Kai came up. Lance Hao Kai stood at the door, clapped his hands and said, "Let's go, Xian Air. We should go back to the hotel too." Lan Xian had just said that Steamed Bun was going to eat people, but now she didn't take advantage of the situation. She turned around and hid behind Shishi. She giggled and said, "I'm not going back. I want to play with Shishi." Lance Hao Kai helplessly rolled his eyes and said, "This is their wedding room. Uncle Yang and Auntie Mo are going to sleep later. Why are you butting in?" However, Lan Xian shook her head vehemently. Shishi also defended her little friend and pleaded, "Uncle Lan, can you let Xian Air stay at our house? I also want to play with Xian Air." "No, today's situation is special. We can't disturb others." Lance Hao Kai shook his head, and even put on a stern face. Lan Xian was quite afraid that her father would lose his temper. She pursed her lips and slowly got off the bed. At this moment, the little puppy barked at her and wagged its tail vigorously, as if it was urging her to stay. This made Lan Xian even more reluctant to leave. She looked at Steamed Bun and Shishi longingly. Her eyes were red and she was about to cry. Yang Yi couldn't bear to see her like this. He said to Lance Hao Kai, "How about this? There's an empty room downstairs that's already been tidied up. Wasn't it used as a dressing room before? You and Lan Xian don't go back to the hotel. It's late at night and it's not safe to go back. Just stay at my house for the night. Let Xian Air and Shishi play for a while. When she falls asleep, I'll send her downstairs." Uncle Yang's words reignited Lan Xian's hope. She looked at her father expectantly. "How can that be? You and Murphy are having your wedding night tonight. It's not good to disturb you." Lance Hao Kai didn't want to go into too much detail in front of the children. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and said, "What wedding night? Murphy's pregnant for less than 2 months. We still have to wait. Anyway, there are 2 children here. It's more lively. Murphy also likes it." In this way, Lance Hao Kai settled down. The night passed quietly, and Yang Yi and Murphy only stayed at home for 2 more days. They also set off for Jiang City. Now the news of Murphy and Yang Yi's wedding had also spread throughout the country. Of course, the news came from the micro-broadcasting account of Zhuozi. Although he authorized other media to repost it, they had to use his name. In addition, LVU released the hot news in batches. The number of followers of the micro-broadcasting account of Zhuozi increased exponentially. In a few days it had more than 3 million followers. This paparazzi could actually sneak into a wedding in the village. According to LVU's own statement, he sneaked in. It was a bit too powerful. For this not particularly surprising news, the focus of the onlookers was naturally not on the relationship between Yang Yi and Murphy. The 2 of them had already gotten a marriage certificate. Originally, the wedding would happen sooner or later. It was just a little sudden. They were concerned about the scale of the wedding, the process, and the invited guests. The scale was still a bit disappointing. Yang Yi and Murphy were already very well-known stars. They actually chose to hold their wedding in a small village instead of going abroad and finding an island or a sunny beach. Of course, it was not incomprehensible for others to hold a wedding in their hometown. It was just that everyone felt that it was a bit low. It was like the best young man in the village going out with the only 100 yuan left in the village, and the hope of the whole village to marry a star. This kind of return in glory had an inexplicable sense of joy. There was nothing picky about a Chinese wedding. LVU did not take photos of Yang Yi and Murphy. He only took photos of them singing on the stage. In the photos, Yang Yi and Murphy's costumes were somewhat amazing. In the comments of some netizens, This seemed to be the only praiseworthy part of the whole wedding. Among the wedding guests, there was a familiar face, Chen Yijie. He came to attend Yang Yi's wedding, and he was dressed as the best man. It further confirmed that there was an indescribable friendship between him and Yang Yi. There had been rumors before that Yang Yi wrote a song for Chen Yijie. The combination of Chen Yijie and Mu Xiang was worth looking forward to. LVU finally broke out a big news. Yang Yi and Murphy sang a new song. Today I Want to Marry You at the wedding. Both of them sang in a different style than usual, but their singing was very beautiful, very touching, and very sweet. Believe me, if you can hear this song at the wedding like me, you will be filled with happiness and want to find someone to marry. LVU said on micro-broadcasting exaggeratedly, although he was showing off and asking for a beating. Unfortunately, because of copyright issues, I can't expose the lyrics here. But I'm looking forward to their new work. I believe that if this song is released, it will be the first choice for many weddings. There is nothing more romantic than singing, "Today You Want to Marry Me," with your lover at the wedding. Therefore, after Yang Yi and Murphy returned to Jiangcheng, they were surrounded by enthusiastic reporters. "Yang Yi, Murphy, when will you release a new song?" I'm afraid there will be no answer to this question for the time being. Chapter 488. When they returned to Jiangcheng, the reporters who had been waiting for a long time swarmed over and blocked the entrance of the coffee shop to interview Yang Yi. Yang Yi protected Murphy and Shishi, and it wasn't easy for him to get rid of the reporters. He closed the courtyard door and went upstairs while smiling helplessly at Murphy. "It seems like we should move over to the villa after we buy all the furniture." "Sure, I think the environment over there is not bad. It's very quiet." Murphy smiled at Yang Yi. "I also like the villa. It's very, very big. Steamed Bun will definitely like it." Shishi went upstairs and couldn't help but reach out to play with the little puppy in her father's basket. "Then Daddy will try to finish it as soon as possible, and then our whole family will move over together." Yang Yi laughed happily. Now that Mo Henian and Zhou Mingyu had returned to the United States, Yang Yi and Murphy didn't have to be nervous at home. They didn't hesitate to hug and be intimate with each other. Yang Yi put the luggage he brought back, took off his coat, and walked out. He walked to Mo Fei, who was sitting on the sofa, sat down, kissed her on the cheek, and then said softly, "As soon as you came back, you were calling and texting again. Didn't you say that you were going to rest for a while?" Mo Fei was indeed very tired. In her hometown, she did not just sit around and wait for food and drinks. She participated in the whole process of the wedding preparation and planning, not to mention the days before and after the wedding. Originally, Mo Fei did not like to socialize very much. Although she was willing to do these things, it still consumed a lot of energy. Looking at her somewhat dispirited state of mind, Yang Yi felt his heart ache. Murphy leaned her head on Yang Yi's chest and said, "I didn't plan to go out to work. It's just that the company's public relations department asked me some questions from the media. For example, when will I release a new song, so I called Shawan to discuss it." Yang Yi rubbed Mo Fei's head and said with a smile, "I've read a book. It said that you shouldn't be too tired in the next few months, so if you want to release a new song, I suggest you wait for a month. You can also give yourself a holiday." If it weren't for the fact that Murphy was still in the early stages of pregnancy, and needed to maintain sufficient rest, and not be suitable for long-distance travel and strenuous exercise, Yang Yi would have wanted to go on a honeymoon with her. "Shawan means that we will release a new song after the contract with Tianmei," Murphy said. "Well, that's not bad. Anyway, we don't have to wait too long. Your contract will expire in mid-June." "Calm, Yang Yi. Then I have one more thing to discuss with you. I want to make the news of my pregnancy public. I don't want to hide it and wait for the reporters to expose it." Murphy raised her head and sat up straight on the sofa. She looked at Yang Yi and said seriously, "What do you think?" Yang Yi didn't care. He smiled and said, "It's okay to make it public. It's a good thing. You should get everyone's blessing." On the same day, Yang Yi picked up the 3 British shorthairs from Yang Huan. When Yang Huan went home to attend her brother's wedding, she had sent the cats to Yang Yi's former dormitory and asked her roommates to take care of them. However, because Yang Huan came back earlier than Yang Yi, the cats were still living in her and Ding Xiang's house. When it saw the poop picker, Xiao Guai was a little more clingy. It jumped down from the sofa and rubbed its head against Yang Yi's trousers. Its tail was also curling up. It raised its big face and meowed bitterly. Little Gray and Shidu were a little cold. Little Gray stayed on the sofa and watched. Shidu turned its head angrily and pointed its butt at Yang Yi. It seemed that they were very unhappy that the poop picker hadn't come to see them for so long. Anyway, they could finally go home. Yang Yi packed them up in a cat cage and carried them back. The cat cage was a little dirty. Yang Yi opened the cage in the yard and let them out. He was going to clean the cage before carrying it back. Now that Murphy was pregnant, Yang Yi had to pay extra attention to the pets at home. It didn't mean that pregnant women couldn't raise cats and dogs at home. What worried people was that Toxoplasma gondii had nothing to do with dogs. As for cats, as long as some precautions were taken, there was no need to worry too much. For example, before this, Yang Yi had taken the 3 British Shorthair kittens to the pet hospital for checkups and vaccinations. Then he never fed them raw meat. Cleaning the cat bed and cleaning the cat litter was also done by Yang Yi. After that, he would wash his hands clean. Usually, the 3 kittens weren't allowed to run outside. After they were neutered, they didn't like to run outside. This eliminated the chance of them having contact with wild cats. In addition to the kittens, Yang Yi would also arrange time to send Murphy for checkups regularly. Besides the checkups, he would also check on Murphy's health. Basically, he didn't have to worry about the cats causing trouble. However, the 3 kittens still recognized their home. They climbed the stairs by themselves. On the other hand, Shido was a little more reserved. She slowly walked up the stairs while Little Gray and Little Guai chased each other up the stairs like 2 black shadows. However, after turning the corner of the stairs, the 2 British Shorthairs became a little more reserved. They stopped running and slowly walked towards the living room. Little Guai couldn't help but call out, "Meow." Murphy, who was sitting on the sofa watching TV, heard the movement. She smiled and said to Shishi, "Shishi, look, Little Guai and the others are back." Shishi, who was sitting on the carpet and playing, turned her head. When she saw Little Guai and Little Gray, she excitedly called out to them. Then she struggled to pick up Steamed Bun and turned around. Dang dang dang. The little girl was very happy to show off her new friends to Little Guai and Little Gray. Little Guai, Little Gray, and Dondo, look, this is Steamed Bun, your new little sister. Steamed Bun was still very ignorant of the world. He stuck out his tongue and looked at the few big kittens in front of him with his melancholy eyes. British Shorthairs that were more than 10 months old were already big cats, especially when they were a little fat. They were even bigger than Steamed Bun. However, they weren't scary. Their big round faces looked very silly. However, Little Guai and Little Gray stopped in their tracks. They looked at Steamed Bun with their big eyes, and then looked at their beloved little master. They seemed to be a little shocked. "Meow, you actually secretly have a puppy outside?" Murphy had already expected that the encounter between cats and dogs would be extraordinary. Therefore, she didn't care about watching TV. She held back her laughter and leaned to the side to watch the show. She didn't think so. She happily put Steamed Bun down and patted his head. She giggled and said, "Steamed Bun, this is Little Guai, Little Gray, and the one behind is Dondo. They are all bigger than you." The little girl pushed the little puppy, wanting it to take the initiative to get to know the other little friends. Steamed Bun was a newborn cub that wasn't afraid of tigers. He wagged his tail and went over. It wasn't clear whether he wanted to smell the other party's scent or drink milk. He actually put his nose under Little Guai's belly. Little Guai's big round blue face was slightly tilted up. It seemed to be looking at Steamed Bun with disdain. "What are you doing, dog? What are you doing? Playing with a female dog in broad daylight? Are you a hooligan? Don't come over. If you come over, I'll..." Steamed Bun nudged around. Finally, Little Guai couldn't take it anymore. It reached out its paw and slapped Steamed Bun over. Then, it jumped onto the cat tree and opened its small mouth that didn't feel threatening at all. It seemed to be threatening Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun was also useless. His body was actually not much different from a cat's, but his limbs were weak and he couldn't stand properly. He was slapped flat on his back. The little puppy had never experienced this before. After it got up, it whimpered and went back into Shishi's arms to seek comfort. Little Guai, you are so bad. How could you fight with Steamed Bun? You two have to be good friends. Seeing this scene, Shishi was a little unhappy. She squatted down and patted Steamed Bun's drooping head to comfort it. At the same time, she spoke angrily to Little Guai on the cat tree. However, Little Guai didn't understand its master's words. It only felt that its master was blaming it. It seemed to have realized that it had done something wrong, so it buried its head on the soft cushion of the cat tree. Seeing this, Little Gray also jumped onto the cat tree to avoid the limelight. On the other hand, Shido slowly turned around. It was a little arrogant and kept a distance from Steamed Bun. However, it still walked around Steamed Bun and Shishi, as if it was observing this new member. After a while, Yang Yi finally came up. Shishi ran over and complained to her father. She pointed at Little Guai on the cat tree and said, "Papa, Little Guai is not good today. It bullied Steamed Bun." What's going on? Yang Yi was confused. Murphy finally couldn't help but laugh. She explained to Yang Yi, "Cats and dogs are fighting. When we wanted to raise Steamed Bun, I told you that maybe the cats and dogs at home can't get along. Today, Steamed Bun's first day here, and he was slapped by Little Guai. But it's okay. Little Guai's temper isn't that bad. It didn't even show its claws. Look, Steamed Bun's face is still fine." Murphy also tried to explain for Little Guai. But they are also family. They can't fight." Shishi was a little confused. She looked at her mother, then looked up and said to her father. Yang Yi smiled. He rubbed his daughter's little head and said gently, "It's okay. Steamed Bun is new here. Little Guai and the others are still not familiar with each other. In the future, they will play together." Really? Shishi looked at her father worriedly. There was indeed a saying that cats and dogs don't get along. However, Yang Yi felt that this could still be reconciled. In his previous life, he had seen many videos of cats and dogs getting along harmoniously on the internet. Moreover, he had consulted with a pet expert. In the expert's opinion, it wasn't a problem for domestic cats and dogs to get along well. The expert even gave Yang Yi a heartwarming story of a dog picking up a kitten to take care of as an example. Yang Yi smiled and nodded to his daughter. He said, "Of course. Look, aren't Dodo and Steamed Bun getting to know each other? They aren't fighting." Steamed Bun seemed to have turned around and forgotten the grievance just now. He was interested in Dodo, who was sizing him up. He carefully moved closer and sniffed around. Dodo was still cold. It raised its little paw and pressed it on Steamed Bun's head, not letting him get close. However, compared to Little Guai, Dodo was much gentler. It was the first time they met, so there was still a sense of distance between them. Chapter 489. The negotiations between Global Pictures and Yang Yi's team had reached a stalemate. Yang Yi, who was busy purchasing furniture and appliances for his new home, took the time to visit Sahara Publishing. On the one hand, he wanted to give his employees wedding candy, and on the other hand, he wanted to listen to Lu Benji's report. Currently, the most important point of disagreement between Manager Zhu and us is the adaptation of the script. Lu Benji told Yang Yi, "Global Pictures wants to adapt the original story to suit the Chinese national conditions. They also want to change the characters to Chinese." Yang Yi found it unbelievable. He spread his hands and said, "Why? Are they out of their minds? My novel can almost be used as a script, and they want to adapt it? And they want to change it to Chinese national conditions? What a joke. Not to mention the strict gun control in China. With so many complicated character clues and characteristics, how can they just change it? Changing it to Chinese national conditions, just thinking about it is funny and ridiculous. What they mean is that you can be the screenwriter, and the original author can adapt it." Lu Benji scratched his head and added, "There's no room for discussion. Either they shoot it according to my story, or they get lost." Yang Yi was getting impatient. If they wanted to adapt Prison Break, they might as well write a new story. Of course, Lu Benji was not the other party's lobbyist. He nodded and said, "Boss, you've mentioned this request to us before, So our negotiation team has repeatedly emphasized to them that they can't change the story too much. We've also explained to them why they can't adapt it. Then why are they still so persistent? Don't they have a reasonable judgment? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that there was no possibility of such a huge adaptation of the story. According to the information we received, this request was made by Global Pictures China President, Su Zhongwei, Liu Benji explained. Liu Benji explained, it's probably because they're hoping to achieve something in this project. If they were to use their headquarters resources to film in America and hire American actors, the benefits that Mr. Su would receive would be greatly reduced. The CEO of Global Pictures in China wanted to avoid the headquarters in the US, so he could only adapt the movie that they had high hopes for. Yang Yi was not at the negotiating table, so he had no idea that the people sent by Global Pictures were talking about national justice to his negotiating team. But everyone was smart. How could they be so easily stirred up by these people? But Yang Yi wouldn't think for them. He waved his hand at Liu Benji and said, since they insist on this request, let's put it aside for now. If you want to talk, then don't mention these conditions. Also, if they want to talk about it in the future, I can tell them that I have to be the scriptwriter. This is a necessary condition. After talking about this, Yang Yi took out a USB flash drive and handed it to Liu Benji. There are 2 new books that I wrote, but they are both storybooks, suitable for children to read. One of them is Journey to the West, which is based on ancient myths, and the other one is a collection of the bedtime stories that I told Shishi recently. You guys can organize and lay out it. As for the title, let's call it Shishi's Bedtime Stories 2. These 2 books took a long time to organize. Among them, the most complicated was the organization of Journey to the West. In order to make the story of Journey to the West easy to understand and suitable for children to read, Yang Yi spent a few months rewriting it. Shishi's Bedtime Stories 2-inch was a little better. Yang Yi organized the long story of Ice Age and the short stories that he told Shishi recently into words and put them into one book. Liu Benji quickly took it and plugged it into his computer. You can read it when I get back. If you have any suggestions, you can tell me over the phone or email. Yang Yi was very busy. He waved his hand and said, besides the film and TV copyright of Prison Break, is there anything else? Liu Benji flipped through his small notebook and said, yes, it's about your 6 signing events next month. Didn't you say that you wanted to collect the readers' requests, and that you could choose 3 to satisfy them? Yang Yi nodded. When he said this, Yang Yi was in a good mood. After knowing that Murphy was pregnant, he walked like he was floating. So, not only did he agree to hold the signing events, but he also made some decisions that he felt were a little troublesome when he thought about it later. But as a man, he must keep his promise. Liu Benji said, we posted a post on your personal website to collect everyone's requests. Then we sorted the replies with the most likes and filtered out some nonsensical requests. Finally, we sorted out the 10 with the most likes for you to choose from. Not every reader made a request seriously. Some of them even had some teasing or bad taste. For example, they asked for Yang Yi to wear women's clothes. Naturally, these were filtered out. Liu Benji turned his computer screen over. There were 10 requests listed on it. For example, Yang Yi was asked to interact with the readers in the book review section every day. Yang Yi read it with great interest. To choose 3, Yang Yi pondered for a while. He pointed to the requests and said, I can agree to the first request. Organize more reader activities to let the fans have a sense of belonging. Yang Yi raised his head and smiled at Liu Benji. I think this can be done. You can find someone to organize it. Organize a small activity every 2 weeks and a big activity every 2 months. Yes, you can organize it on your personal website. This can improve the cohesion. Liu Benji nodded and wrote in his notebook. Activities can't be organized casually. First of all, the small activities can't be too complicated. Let more people participate. The prizes can be smaller. For example, the Sahara Online Mall vouchers are good, but the quantity must be large to ensure that there are more winners. Yang Yi said, I suggest that you can contact Backwave Technology Company, and use their social media platform to design a small activity like a lottery. Liu Benji knew that these two companies were inextricably linked to Yang Yi. He didn't ask much. He listened carefully and took notes. Big events can be organized on our website, but the awards have to be attractive enough. For example, we can reward them with an overseas trip or a two-person honeymoon. The content of the event has to be well designed. Whether it's an online or offline event, it has to be interesting, difficult, and meaningful. For example, you can organize a half-marathon competition for the fans. Let everyone participate in the competition and promote the concept of healthy living. Of course, I'm just giving an example. The fans are scattered all over the country. It's not easy to gather people to participate in the competition. Yang Yi smiled. Right, who came up with this fan family? It sounds like spaghetti. Interesting, Yang Yi said with a smile. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. A fan called Mu Yuchen. He's in Guangzhou, Liu Benji said, but he previously tipped you quite a bit on the website. It shouldn't be less than 100,000. Furthermore, he also put in a lot of effort to organize the fans to clear your name. Is that so? Yang Yi was a little surprised and said, then if he comes to the signing event in Guangzhou, remember to tell me. Forget it. You can make an appointment with him. I'll treat him to a meal. Yang Yi's second request was for him to interact more with the fans on his personal website. It's impossible to interact every day, Yang Yi said to Liu Benji. Set it to once a week. I will appear at random times. Liu Benji also recorded it. As for the last request, Yang Yi pointed at the screen and smiled. If you want me to sing for the fans at the signing event, that's not a problem. Furthermore, I want to sing a new song for everyone, a new song that belongs to them. Liu Benji's face was filled with excitement as he scribbled furiously. Then he raised his head and asked, what song? What's the name? Yang Yi smiled. You'll know when the time comes. Chapter 490. In a few more months, a family of 3 will become a family of 4. On microbroadcasting, Murphy announced that she was pregnant again. Below the microbroadcasting, there was a hand-drawn photo by Yang Yi. It was a photo of Yang Yi's large hand wrapped around Murphy's slender hand, followed by Shishi's chubby little hand. Finally, in Shishi's small hand, there was an additional baby-sized hand. The message was straightforward enough that it caused many media outlets to scramble to report it. Although it lacked the thrill of breaking news, it still gave the public a pleasant surprise. However, the media couldn't get an interview with Murphy even though they blocked the door. In order to ensure her safety, Yang Yi went to the furniture store alone to buy new furniture. Meanwhile, Murphy stayed in the house and rarely left the house. Of course, Yang Yi couldn't bear to see the pregnant Murphy run around everywhere. So he asked Gua Ziyi or Lin Muan for help. As for Murphy, she simply needed to stay at home and come up with ideas. The media couldn't find Murphy, but they still managed to find Murphy's manager, Mo Xiaowan. Mo Xiaowan responded to the media and announced some news on behalf of Murphy. That's right, Murphy is indeed pregnant. Sorry, I can't reveal the time of her pregnancy. This is a personal matter. I hope everyone can give her some private space. After all, she is pregnant and needs a quiet environment. No, Murphy won't retire like last time. She's just been working for too long. She's taking advantage of this opportunity to take a break. Yes, she will. These new songs that everyone has been waiting for will be released after the recording is complete. But not now, Murphy needs some time to rest. I'm sorry, because her body isn't used to it. Murphy won't be able to hold a concert for the time being. She will have to wait until after she gives birth to the baby before making any arrangements. Here, on behalf of Murphy, I would like to apologize to the fans who have been waiting for and supporting Murphy. Yes, she will continue to keep in touch with her fans through music. At the same time, she will interact with her fans through microbroadcasting. Fans who don't have a microbroadcasting account can register and follow Murphy's account. She will announce a lot of news and updates about Murphy's life. Mo Xiaowan was right. Murphy stayed at home with nothing to do, but she couldn't stay idle. After cleaning up, apart from studying the new singing style of songs written by Yang Yi, She also pondered about photography and microbroadcasting. The update speed of Murphy's microbroadcast was increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the past, she basically didn't play with these things. At most, she would have one status update per day. However, Murphy's microbroadcasting now gradually increased from one status update per day to several. In the beginning, Murphy just learned from Yang-yi and recorded Shishi's interesting stories and the daily lives of the pets at home on microbroadcasting. Shishi is becoming more and more sensible. Mom asked her to pour a glass of water, and she was willing to put down the toys in her hands and run to get her a glass of water. Shishi fell in kindergarten today and had a small wound on her hand. Dad put a band-aid with a little monkey pattern on it. When he bathed her at night, she would cover her wound and shout to her mom, "Mom, no, the little monkey can't touch water." Shishi has grown taller. Today, Shishi suddenly shouted as if she had discovered a new world. Her dad and I thought she had touched her wound. Later, we found out that Shishi realized that she had grown taller. In the past, she couldn't reach the dolls on the cabinet, but now she can reach out and take them down. What a long-legged cutie. Like Yang-yi, Murphy was also very concerned about child safety. She didn't want to post pictures of Shishi's face. So when she recorded Shishi's interesting stories on microbroadcasting, it was mostly simple text descriptions. However, when it came to the pets at home, Murphy didn't get tired of posting many pictures she took. Her fans loved to see them. Today, Shishi came to complain that Xiao Guai and Steamed Bun were fighting again. Actually, they weren't. The two little guys were just playing around. Everyone looked there very careful. In the first picture, Xiao Guai stood up and bared its fangs at Steamed Bun. However, in the second picture, Xiao Guai was lying on the ground, and Steamed Bun was playing with its tail. Xiao Guai, with its big face, looked like it had nothing to live for. It seemed like it was tired too. Of the three kittens at home, the closest to Steamed Bun is actually Dodo. Dodo is the big sister. Although she looks cold on the surface, she is a big warm cat in her heart. Last night, when we saw Dodo drinking milk, Steamed Bun came over and she pushed her basin over. However, Steamed Bun still couldn't drink milk and had diarrhea in the middle of the night. Shishi thought it was Xiao Guai who did it. Smiley face. With Yang Yi's guidance, Murphy's photography skills had improved a lot. In addition, women were naturally sensitive to color and knew about composition. In her shots, the cute pets were very vivid. Although they were still pictures, people could always imagine the interesting stories that were happening between them. However, today when Yang Yi picked up Shishi from kindergarten and came back with her, he saw that Murphy had started to play with her handiwork, folding paper. "Mom, what are you doing?" The curious baby Shishi couldn't wait to break free from the shackles of her school bag, ran over and asked, "Mom is folding 1,000 paper cranes." Murphy smiled. She picked up a finished product and said to Shishi, "Look, this is 1,000 paper crane." 1,000 cranes? Shishi still understood the number 1,000. She took the paper crane from her mother's hand and looked at it curiously while muttering, "It's 1,000 paper cranes. Paper with white paper. Of course, you can also think of it as 1,000 paper cranes. However, Mom can't fold that many. She can only fold a few dozen, and then use a rope to hang them up and make curtains." Murphy smiled and said, "Do you think it looks good?" Shishi didn't have any special reaction to her mother's words about the paper crane curtains. However, she looked at the small and cute paper crane in her hand and nodded. "Why did you suddenly think of folding 1,000 paper cranes?" Yang Yi put away Shishi's school bag and asked. "Actually, it was Huan Huan who taught me. During the day, she came here to fold 1,000 paper cranes. She said that she wanted to get a glass jar for Ding Xiang's birthday." Murphy said, "I learned a little and thought it was fun, so I folded some myself." "Ding Xiang's birthday?" Yang Yi said in surprise. "Yes, Ding Xiang's birthday is next Tuesday. You don't even know your own employee's birthday?" Murphy chuckled and said, "Didn't you see her ID card when you joined the company?" Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Why would I pay attention to this? But it's not too late to know now." "Well, we have to quickly discuss what kind of gift to give Ding Xiang," Murphy said excitedly. At this time, She lowered her head and pursed her lips. She was a little embarrassed as she handed over the paper crane that she had loosened in her hand and said timidly, "Mom, I'm sorry. I broke your paper crane." It turned out that the curious little girl had been playing with the folded paper. She thought that it was beautiful, but she wanted to know how it was folded. In the end, when she pulled, the paper crane became deformed. Murphy took a look and said with a smile, "It's okay, Mom can fix it." She opened her eyes wide and watched as Murphy rearranged the broken paper crane. She also put the head back in place. After a period of careful manipulation, the paper crane finally returned to its original shape. "So awesome." She looked at her mother in admiration and muttered to herself. Hearing her daughter's praise, Murphy was a little proud. She picked up a square piece of paper and said to Shishi with a smile, "Shishi, Mom will teach you how to fold 1,000 paper crane, okay?" Shishi nodded happily. Chapter 491. Although Murphy didn't participate, but the entertainment circle was still in turmoil. What caused the uproar was the battle between the singer Yi Qing and the music critic Cui Rue on micro-broadcasting. Yi Qing was the A-list male singer who previously sang Fireworks in the Heart. At the time, he and Murphy's Coming Across the Ocean to See You were locked in battle for the #1 spot. Recently, one of his new singles was completely criticized by the famous music critic Cui Rue. Yi Qing couldn't take this lying down, so he scolded Cui Rue on micro-broadcasting for not being able to ask for money and maliciously splashing dirty water on his song. After Cui Rue was informed by his friends, he also signed up for micro-broadcasting and started arguing with Yi Qing. On one hand, he swore that he didn't take any money. On the other hand, he scolded Yi Qing for not being professional and not being able to listen to criticism. Of course, Cui Rue's poisonous tongue was also well known. Before, all of Murphy's albums had been scolded by him. It was just that his comments weren't objective at all, and he often relied on his pen to turn black into white, and white into black. According to Mo Shawan, this person did have the problem of extorting money from singers. It was just that he had all kinds of reasons for asking for money, so it was very hard for people to catch him. These two clearly underestimated the influence of micro-broadcasting. By the time Yi Qing's management company's PR department reacted, the vulgar words used by these two on micro-broadcasting had already stunned the netizens and fans. The mutual exposé made the audience even more excited. Regardless of who had the upper hand in the war of words, such a war of words was a lose-lose outcome. The one who suffered the most was still Yi Qing. All of the good image he had accumulated before was basically gone. There was only one winner, and that was micro-broadcasting. Taking advantage of this battle, micro-broadcasting harvested another wave of new users. With hundreds of millions of registered users, and still maintaining such a high level of activity, it made the backwave technology company behind it enter the sights of the big shots. Of course, this storm had nothing to do with Murphy and Yang Yi for the time being. Mo Shawan was the only one who was nervous. She wasn't the only one. Many other agents had learned their lesson. They were beginning to truly understand the power of this obscure social media platform. For this reason, Mo Shawan had specially convened a meeting with the employees of the new company and asked them to pay more attention to micro-broadcasting. It was just like how artists couldn't say anything to reporters in the past. Now, every star and manager couldn't casually post their own opinions on micro-broadcasting. They had to be careful and scrutinize everything clearly before posting anything that shouldn't be said. However, Zhu Jie was an exception. Now that he had a new manager, he was like a wild horse out of control. No one could control him. On the 1st of next month, Brother Jie will be back with a new song. Radis and Arrowheads, I missed you so much. Did you miss me? While that night was still in the recording stage, Zhu Jie couldn't wait to post a micro-broadcasting and announce his plans for a new song to his fans. This nonsensical wording and tone was exactly the same as his usual performance on variety shows. It was completely his own performance. Clearly, he didn't discuss with his manager before sending out the micro-broadcasting. This micro-broadcasting still received a lot of likes and pursuit from fans. Zhu Jie's fans basically all knew what kind of person Zhu Jie was. In the comments section, while teasing Brother Jia that this year was a bit too long, they were also looking forward to his new song. However, not everyone could like Zhu Jia's antics. Cui Rui, who had previously insulted Yi Qing and turned herself into an internet celebrity, forwarded Zhu Jia's Weibo and said in a strange tone, "You don't even know how to say ladies and gentlemen. Some uncultured singers shouldn't learn how to use English. Using transliteration will only teach bad things to children who just start learning English. Damn, is this old man crazy? It's fine if he insults Yi Qing, but even me? Do I have a grudge against you?" Zhu Jia, after discovering this, unhappily shouted. There really was a grudge. Zhu Jia was forgetful. He had once ridiculed a bunch of music critics who looked down on him singing Mistress on a variety show, but he forgot that Cui Rui was one of them. Unfortunately, he forgot, but Cui Rui always remembered. This time, she used micro-broadcasting to discuss Zhu Jia. No matter what, now that Zhu Jia had no one to stop him, he couldn't hold back his temper. However, he was still a bit smart. He didn't follow Yi Qing's example of insulting Cui Rui. Instead, he silently recorded a short video and then sent it out on micro-broadcasting. At the uncultured old man who said, "I don't understand English." Micro-broadcasting only left this sentence. In the video, Zhu Jia used fluent English the whole time. First, he greeted the audience, then told them that in this world, there was a kind of undying old thief who wanted to take revenge on society. He himself was insulted by him for no reason. Zhu Jia's English was really good. Although it couldn't compare to native speakers, it was still better than most students. After all, he had studied in England before, and was sent by his dad to receive elite education. Finally, Zhu Jia left a message for Cui Rui. "FAQ, you damn uncultured old man. FAQ, you damn uncultured old man. FAQ, you damn uncultured old man. I'm a Chinese, so I speak Chinese. I just like to use Chinese to speak English, so what? Oh right, by the way, you said I don't understand English, but you don't seem to understand English either. The plural of gentleman should be gentlemen, M-E-N. You can't even understand this little bit of grammar, yet you still have the nerve to insult me. Scram as far as you can." This paragraph, Zhu Jia used Chinese. Although it was Chinese, but after hearing the first half, no one dared to think that he couldn't speak English anymore. On the contrary, Zhu Jia's cursing in Chinese wasn't as disgusting as Yi Qing's. Most of the people who watched this video felt that it was very satisfying. Well insulted. Good job, Zhu Jia. The front row prompt, the one who insulted is Cui Rui, the guy who made a big news with Yi Qing. Before, he also inexplicably insulted our brother Jia. This old man, I've been unhappy with him for a long time. You should scold this kind of uncultured person. FAQ. Just for this point, brother Jia, I'm a fan. Haha, Cui Rui lost a lot of face, right? Pretending to know when you don't know, and ended up scolding someone who really knows. My brother Jia, scolding people without being dirty. My brother Jia is multi-talented, haha. In the comments section, it was almost one-sided in support of Zhu Jia. At this moment, Zhu Jia unexpectedly hyped himself up, and even more people knew that he was going to release a new song. The entertainment circle's liveliness had nothing to do with Yang Yi for the time being. By the weekend, after buying the basic furniture, appliances and so on, Yang Yi and them could finally move. There was no rain on this day, the sun was shining, and the Grand Canal in the distance was sparkling, as if it was plated with a layer of silver film. The flower bed in front of the building was also full of beautiful flowers, red, yellow, purple, pink. It was as if the paint jar had been knocked over here, and it was also beautiful enough to make people stop and linger. It's time to go. Yang Yi gently patted Murphy's shoulder from behind and said softly. Murphy reluctantly looked again, then turned and gently drilled into Yang Yi's arms, hugged his waist and sadly said, "Suddenly I'm a little reluctant to leave here." "I know." Yang Yi gently lifted Murphy's hair that was messed up by the wind. Murphy pulled Yang Yi over, pointed down and said, "Husband, look, I still remember the path on the other side of the Grand Canal. When I didn't have a relationship with you, we were there, walking with Shishi. It was at night, there were no street lights, and you protected me, telling me not to be afraid. Of course I remember, at that time, you even sang a song for me. I found that your a cappella singing was better than the one played on the record. Yang Yi caressed Murphy's face. His eyes were full of love. When it comes to records, I'm a little embarrassed. Murphy's face slightly blushed and said in a low voice, "At that time, you just started to renovate this coffee shop, and I was worried that you would put other beautiful stars' photos and records on the shelf, so I occupied the shelf closest to you and let you put all my records and accessories. Could it be that at that time, you started to listen to my songs?" "How could it be? I have always liked your songs." Yang Yi lied, but then he said seriously, "But I think it's also very good to release your album. How can there be a more beautiful star than you?" Listening to Yang Yi's words of love, Murphy's heart was sweet, but she said, "No, I'm not beautiful. And the flower bed here, it was not so beautiful last year. We just tidied it up this year and planted a lot of beautiful flowers. In the end, it just bloomed, and we have to move away." Murphy looked around and said sadly, "We have a large space in the new villa where we can plant flowers. When the time comes, I'll plant the flowers with you." Yang Yi comforted her. "Besides, we won't be moving out of this house completely. Although Huan Huan and Ding Xiang will move here in the future, the master bedroom will still be left for us. When we are free, we can come back and stay for a few days. And there is my coffee shop here. And so many good friends. When the reporters are no longer blocking here, we can often come to the coffee shop to play." Yang Yi laughed. "Well, I know." Under Yang Yi's comfort, Murphy finally felt relieved. She said with a smile, "In fact, no matter where we live, as long as you and Shishi are here, it is enough." At this time Shishi, who was dressed neatly, ran over. The little girl with 2 long ponytails looked very cute. She shook Yang Yi's mobile phone and giggled. Papa, Exiner called me and asked us to hurry up. She wants to visit my new home." Everything had been packed. Yang Yi and Mo Fei looked at each other and smiled. "Okay, let's go now." Chapter 492. The scenery in the new villa was even better. The neatly trimmed grass in the villa area was lush green, and the purple and reddish-brown bushes and flowers also added to the overall color palette. Driving along the small path by the lake, Yang Yi's car even passed by a few quaint little pavilions and quaint fountains. The car wasn't going very fast, so Yang Yi decided to roll down the windows and sunroof to let the warm spring breeze in, and also let the little girl's happy cries drift out. "It's so beautiful." She couldn't sit still for a long time. She leaned against the car window and looked out greedily. Beside her, Murphy couldn't do anything about her, so she could only watch over her carefully, afraid that she would jump out herself. Fortunately, they soon arrived at their own home. Shishi. Yang Yi's car hadn't even stopped when a chubby little girl jumped out of a parked luxury car and ran over happily, waving at them. Exiner. Shishi heard the noise, and she turned her head and happily called out to her mother's window. She couldn't wait to climb from the child's safety seat to her mother's body, and then climb over again. "You can't. You have to wait for Daddy to park the car before you can get out." Murphy hurriedly held down Shishi and said reproachfully, "Shishi, be good. Didn't you promise Daddy that you'll be a good baby?" And look, Uncle Lon also called Exiner back. "They're going to drive the car in too." Yang Yi spoke up to help. "I'm a good baby." Shishi didn't play around anymore, and obediently sat back in her seat. However, the little girl's big eyes looked around, and her gaze had already drifted outside impatiently. The gate in front of the villa was an AI door lock. Yang Yi pressed a button with the remote control in the car, and it slowly opened. 2 cars slowly drove in, and stopped in front of the gate. "You're finally here. Exiner has been nagging since yesterday." Lance Hao Kai got out of the front passenger seat. Before he even made his appearance, his loud voice traveled over. Lan Xian and her mother Wu Jingjing also got out of the car. Shishi, who had just been carried out of the car by her father, couldn't wait to run over. She giggled and hugged her little friend, jumping and jumping. "Because we still had some things to pack today, so we were a step behind." Yang Yi smiled at Lance Hao Kai. Wu Jingjing and Murphy also greeted them. They were already very familiar with each other, and had a good relationship. After all, Wu Jingjing was Murphy's fan, and the two women occasionally contacted each other on the phone. While the adults were greeting each other, the children wanted to interrupt. Lan Xian pulled Shishi and squeezed in front of Yang Yi. She said excitedly, "Uncle Yang, can you take down Shishi's cat and puppy first?" Shishi also raised her little head and kindly added a few words to her little friend. "Haha Papa, Xian Air wants Xiao Guai, Xiao Hui Dudu and Bao Tua to play with." Xian Air, don't make trouble. Your Uncle Yang just moved here, and he hasn't packed yet. Wu Jingjing said softly. Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. It's okay. He went to the back of Tyrannical Wolf and took down the cat cage with the 3 British Shorthairs and the dog cage with Bao Tua. He opened the cage and let them out. Bao Tua. Lan Xian shouted happily and pounced on the little puppy. Sure enough, small pets were more popular. Bao Tua was actually very smart. Unlike the other 3 British Shorthairs, he didn't look around after coming out of the cage. Instead, he wagged his tail and burrowed into Lan Xian's arms. Then he struggled out again and jumped to Shishi's feet for a while, and then jumped back to Lan Xian's side. He jumped around excitedly as if he had been locked up for many years. Cats were a little cold. Only Xiao Guai went to Shishi's side and rubbed his body against her feet. Then he closed his eyes and enjoyed Shishi's touch. Xiao Hui and Dudu scattered as if nothing had happened. They weren't affected by being locked up in the cage at all. Instead, they were more interested in their new surroundings. Xiao Guai Bao Tua, this will be our home from now on. Cici picked up the chubby Xiao Guai with great difficulty, then led Steamed Bun, who was eagerly following her, to the grass under the sunlight. She put Xiao Guai down, then stepped on the grass with her pink sneakers, and said happily with her hands spread out. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone on the little girl's cute smiling face. Her small eyes were curved like crescent moons, her small mouth was smiling sweetly, and her neat and white teeth made it seem as if the whole spring was shining brightly. Shishi, I'll bring my big dog over to play with you in the future. Lan Xian was also bouncing around excitedly. Under the warm sunlight, her chubby little body seemed to be filled with energy as well. Okay. Shishi giggled. As if influenced by them, Bao Tua also ran around the grass happily or circled around the 2 little girls. His tail was wagging so much that his butt was about to pop out. Xiao Guai and the others also seemed to be very satisfied with this environment. Xiao Hui and Xiao Guai rolled around on the grass and played around. Meanwhile, Dudu was lying on the grass and lazily grabbing the grass. She stretched her enchanting waist and squinted her eyes. On the new side of the house, whether it was the space in the courtyard or the spacious villa, it was much bigger than the previous house. This was of course good news for the kittens and puppies who loved to play and move around. As for Shishi, the happiest thing about moving here was that she could often visit Lan Xian in the future. On the adult side, Murphy and Wu Jingjing sat on the swing outside the house and chatted. They needed to take care of the 2 little girls who were playing outside. It wasn't that there was any external danger, but they were worried that they would accidentally run to the back of the house. There was a swimming pool there. Although there was no water, it was still very dangerous to accidentally step into such a big hole. On the other hand, Lan's Hao Kai was invited by Yang Yi to go in and look at the decorations after Yang Yi bought the furniture. When they walked to the dining room on the first floor, Lan's Hao Kai turned his head and said, "Yang Yi, I think you should make a red wine rack in the dining room to collect some red wine. It would look more tasteful. Now that this big rack is here, it's empty and doesn't look good at all." Yang Yi glanced at Lan's Hao Kai's big rack and said with a smile, "Murphy doesn't like wine, and Shishi doesn't let me drink either. So now there's basically no wine in the house. How can I collect it? There's a mystery behind this rack. Look at this height. It's not a waste of space. In the future, it will be reserved for Murphy to place her flower arrangements." Flower arrangements? Lan's Hao Kai looked at it carefully again, nodded and said, "This is good. Your wife knows how to do this. I'll ask Jing Jing to come over and learn from her later." "Haha, no problem." Yang Yi smiled and nodded. As the 2 chatted, Yang Yi suddenly received a call. Guaziyi and the others had finally arrived. When they moved, there were actually a lot of things to move. Although many things could be bought again, things like the guitar, Murphy's clothes, Yang Yi's books, Shishi's toys, and so on still had to be brought over. The more Murphy packed, the more things there were. Dominator couldn't fit them all. Therefore, Yang Yi asked for 2 commercial cars from Sahara Publishing. Together with Mo Xiaozhuan's car, there were 3 cars in total. Guozi drove 1 car with Ding Xiang and Yang Huan. Lin Muan drove the other car with his girlfriend. Mo Xiaowan drove Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan. The group of people came over to help Yang Yi move and celebrate the arrival of the new house. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan knew that Yang Yi had been helping them. Although they were still in the lawsuit and couldn't do anything else to repay Yang Yi, they could still come over and help Yang Yi move. They came a little later because Yang Huan and Ding Xiang had to go to class. Yang Yi and the others couldn't wait because of Shishi, so they set off first. The remaining 3 cars were led by Mo Xiaowan. They carried the remaining luggage and set off together after everyone had arrived. However, Yang Yi forgot that their cars hadn't been registered yet. They were stopped at the entrance of the neighborhood. "It's okay. I'll contact the security guard now and let you in." Yang Yi put down his phone and used the access control system to inform the security guard at the entrance. After a while, Yang Yi received a call from Yang Huan. The 3 cars had been let in. Chapter 493. It wasn't good to stay in the sun for too long, so Murphy let the 2 girls play outside for a while before calling them in. After playing for a while, Shishi and Lan Xian were both sweating profusely, and their hair was curly from the sweat. However, they still happily called out and laughed. They dodged their mother's hands and ran happily with Bao Bao. When they were about to enter the door, Guozi and Lin Mu and were carrying a large cardboard box and blocking the door. Shishi and Lan Xian stopped. The 2 girls giggled and huddled together as if they had bumped into each other. Bao Bao was too small, so he couldn't react in time and bumped into Shishi's leg. The little puppy shook his head and looked up at Guozi and Lin Mu and in front of him. He hesitated for a moment, but still dutifully barked at the 2 big guys. Woo, woo. His voice didn't sound like a dog's bark, and it wasn't threatening at all. However, the little one jumped bravely, as if he wanted to protect the little master behind him. "Ladies first." Guozi smiled and gestured to Lin Muan. The 2 of them moved aside to let them go in first. "What did he say?" Lan Xian asked Shishi in confusion. "Little Uncle Guo told us to go first," Shishi said, knowing this phrase. Yang Yi and Lan Zhoukai walked out clapping their hands. Now all the men were helping to move things. Even Lan Zhoukai enthusiastically wanted to help. Of course, Yang Yi knew that Lan Zhoukai couldn't carry heavy things, so he secretly used his strength to carry most of the weight. "Shishi Xian, go upstairs and play. Don't disturb the adults," Yang Yi said, waving his hand. "Okay." Shishi and Lan Xian held hands and ran upstairs. Steamed Bun also eagerly followed along, but the 3 British shorthairs were still playing outside. Shishi was already used to their wanton behavior. "Xian, let me show you my room," Shishi said crisply. "Okay." Lan Xian nodded happily. However, when they reached the corner of the stairs, they heard Steamed Bun's anxious cries. The 2 girls looked back and realized that Steamed Bun hadn't come up yet. The little puppy didn't dare to climb the stairs and anxiously paced around at the bottom. "Steamed Bun, come on up," Shishi beckoned. However, Steamed Bun jumped in front of the stairs. His short legs couldn't jump high, and he didn't know how to climb the stairs. He could only turn in circles, not knowing what to do. Just then, Yang Huan came over. Yang Yi was still worried, so he asked her to take care of the 2 girls upstairs. Shishi's big eyes lit up. She begged, "Auntie, can you bring Steamed Bun up?" It was a piece of cake for Yang Huan. She gently scooped Steamed Bun up and carried him upstairs. Shishi and Lan Xian happily continued to run upstairs. Steamed Bun, who was in Yang Huan's arms, was restless. He turned his little head and looked around. Then he stepped on Yang Huan's bulging chest with his 2 front legs, leaving a green mark on her white shirt. Yang Huan didn't notice. She carried Steamed Bun upstairs and put him down. Then she said, "Shishi, your dad told me to tell you that you can play upstairs, but you can't run around, especially on the balcony. We're going to Shishi's room, Lan Xian said for Shishi. Very good. Then let's play in the room. Young Huan smiled. My room is here. It's super big. Shishi brought Lan Xian and Yang Huan to the master bedroom. It was indeed big. The master bedroom was dozens of square meters, including a big balcony, a walk-in closet and a bathroom. The furniture in the master bedroom was similar to those in the hotel. There was a bed, a cabinet, a table, a TV, and so on. However, compared to such a big space, it still looked simple. However, Lan Xian and Shishi didn't care. The two girls happily threw themselves on the big bed. They took off their shoes and jumped on the spring mattress in their socks. This is super fun, Shishi happily said to Lan Xian as she jumped. I like it too. Lan Xian was also having fun. She panted and said, my bed is soft. You can't jump. Then you can come to my house to play, Shishi said. Young Huan saw that they were having fun. The bed was big, so she didn't have to worry about them falling out. She walked to the balcony and looked around. Young Huan had been in cram school and practicing acting. It was her first time here. Shishi and the girls jumped and sometimes fell down. However, the quilt was new and very soft. It didn't hurt when they fell down. Instead, the more they fell, the more fun they found it. The girls on the bed couldn't stop giggling. Steamed Bun anxiously barked under the bed. It couldn't get up. At this stage, it was very clingy and wanted its master to play with it all the time. Fortunately, the two girls didn't slack off this time. They climbed down the bed and picked up Steamed Bun. They worked together to lift Steamed Bun up, so that he could reach the edge of the bed. Steamed Bun successfully got up. Shishi and Lan Xian climbed up. The two girls and the dog jumped on top of the bed again. Fortunately, it was quite tiring to jump around like this. Lan Xian couldn't take it anymore. She lay on the bed and panted heavily. Shishi sat next to them and watched Steamed Bun jump around between them. Lan Xian, who was panting, suddenly remembered something. She turned her head and asked expectantly, Shishi, am I the first good friend to come to your room? Shishi thought about it. None of her good friends had come to her house. She nodded and said, yes, Xian Air is the first. Lan Xian raised her foot happily as if she wanted to dance, but she was too tired to do so. Young Huan couldn't hear the movements in the room. She walked in and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Shishi, how could you let Steamed Bun on your bed? What if he dirtied your parents' bed? You were playing outside just now. This is Shishi's bed, Lan Xian said in confusion. Shishi, why did your aunt say it was your parents' bed? This is my papa's and mom's bed, Shishi said matter-of-factly. You still sleep with your parents? Lan Xian blinked and said, I've been sleeping alone since I was 3 years old. I have my own room, which is as big as this one. You sleep alone? Shishi was a little surprised. But I want to sleep with mom and listen to papa's stories. I'm a big girl. Big girls don't sleep with their parents. Lan Xian shouted proudly with her chest out. Young Huan helplessly saw that the two girls were going off topic. She had to go up and take Steamed Bun down. The little puppy was reluctant. He wanted to climb up on the ground. Unfortunately, his legs were short. I want to sleep with mom and papa. Shishi didn't care about Steamed Bun. She reluctantly said to Lan Xian. Then you're not a big girl. You're still a little girl. Lan Xian didn't show any mercy. Shishi looked at Young Huan for help. Young Huan sighed secretly. She decided to help her brother. She shrugged and smiled at Shishi. Shishi, Xian Air is right. You're growing up. In a few months you'll be 5 years old. You should learn to be independent and get used to sleeping alone. But I'm scared. Shishi pursed her lips and muttered reluctantly. Don't be scared. I'm not scared, Lan Xian said to Shishi. You can sleep in my room too. We can sleep together. Really? Shishi suddenly became happy again, as if she didn't feel wrong just now. Hee, I'll sleep with you too. Let's sleep now. Lan Xian rolled on Shishi's big bed. Shishi was in high spirits. She rolled on the bed and rolled up the quilt. She giggled and said, let's sleep then. Hee. Young Huan watched the two girls rolling around in the quilt. She was a little confused by their changing topics. She shook her head helplessly and went to the balcony to enjoy the scenery. Chapter 494. At night, after dinner in the clubhouse, everyone went back home. After a busy day, it was time to take a break. However, Yang Yi couldn't bear to see the big and small boxes in the living room messily. He was still tidying up. He took out rows of clothes and bags of toys from the boxes and carried them upstairs to arrange them properly. Yang Yi was full of energy. He didn't feel tired running up and down. On the contrary, seeing the boxes being cleaned up by him, he became more and more energetic. Shishi had been playing all day. She was so sleepy that she couldn't help yawning. She didn't want to move and just wanted to sleep. But the little girl hadn't taken a bath yet, so Murphy carried her to the bathroom in the bedroom to take a bath. Soaking in the warm water and wiping her face, Shishi finally felt a little refreshed. Mama, Cece, who was sitting in the bathtub, was playing with the bubbles in her hands as she called out. Yes. Murphy answered casually as she carefully washed the foam on her back with a soft towel. Mom, Xinair said that she sleeps in a room alone. Shishi said. Murphy looked up and said jokingly, Really? Do you also want to sleep in a room alone? Shishi quickly shook her head and said with a pout, No, I'll be scared. Murphy smiled secretly. She didn't have the heart to tell the little girl a cruel truth. In fact, after Shishi fell asleep at night, she often slept alone in the room. At this time, Shishi explained to her mother unhappily, but Xinair said that she sleeps alone since she was 3 years old. Slow down. You mean that Xinair has been sleeping alone since she was 3 years old, right? Murphy said softly. Yes, then Auntie also said that Shishi has grown up and wants to sleep alone. Shishi nodded her head and said with a little grievance. It was too late. If she washed her hair, she couldn't sleep later. So Murphy put a big bath cap on her little head, which looked very interesting. Do you want to sleep alone? Murphy asked softly. No, I want to sleep with Papa and Mom. Shishi missed the feeling of being sandwiched between her parents. It was very warm. What's more, Yang Yi didn't sleep with Mo Fei in Cece's arms many times. After they got the marriage certificate, they slept like this for a while. Later, when Grandpa came, Yang Yi could only sleep in the second bedroom alone. Shishi hadn't enjoyed this kind of happiness yet. Then don't rush to live in a room by yourself. Mo Fei smiled and asked the little girl to stand up. She was going to change the water in the bathtub. Really? Shishi looked at her mother with her big eyes in surprise. After she heard Lan Xian and Yang Huan's words, she didn't know what to do. She didn't expect her mother to give her hope again. Of course, Shishi will always be Mom's little darling, Murphy said with a smile. Shishi opened her bare arms and hugged her mother's neck. With a bag sound, she gave her mother a kiss and then laughed happily. Hey, there are still bubbles and water on your body. They are all on Mama's body. Mo Fei smiled and patted Cece's little butt gently. The little girl was still hanging on Mom's body. She giggled and shook her little butt mischievously, saying, Mom, you haven't taken a bath yet. Don't be afraid. At this time, there was a soft knock on the bathroom door. Yang Yi's voice sounded. Young Shi, tell Dad, what's with the messy dog footprints on the bed? Could it be that Steamed Bun can jump onto such a high bed by himself? Hearing her father's scolding voice, Shishi, who had been caught doing something bad, hugged her mother's neck and stamped her feet on the ground as if she was running away. She was embarrassed and mischievous. The next morning, the chirping of birds opened the prelude to the day. They came from Pavilion Mountain behind the villa area. In this quiet and peaceful villa area, they didn't seem to have to worry about their own safety. They could fly freely between the trees and jump onto the bushes in the green belt to show their singing to passers-by. On the beautiful artificial lake, Yang Yi was striding with his long legs, maintaining a steady breath and running in the midst of the singing of the birds. Running here, although it didn't consume a lot of energy like climbing Pavilion Mountain in the past to achieve the effect of exercise, the scenery by the lake was still as beautiful. The air was also very fresh, making people feel relaxed and happy. After running a few laps at an extraordinary speed, Yang Yi went to the nearby market to buy groceries. However, it was still early, so he wasn't in a hurry to make breakfast. Instead, he threw the big and small bags of meat and vegetables in the kitchen. He went to the courtyard of the villa and began to practice Hong Quan. Although it was the kung fu of this life, Yang Yi's boxing was not ordinary. He used real kung fu. When he punched the air, his clothes fluttered, and it had the power to split mountains. When he kicked out, he turned around like lightning and swept out a second leg. The wind from his foot caused an explosion in the air. After practicing for an unknown period of time, Yang Yi's body was soaked in sweat. His slightly bronzed muscles seemed to be smeared with a layer of tung oil. It was a sight to behold. Just as he was panting heavily and slowly walking around the grass in the front yard to recover, Murphy rubbed her sleepy eyes and appeared on the balcony on the second floor. "Good morning." When Murphy saw Yang Yi, she revealed a beautiful smile and said with a soft voice that still had a slight nasal sound, "Good morning." Yang Yi replied with a smile, "Quickly come up and practice. I'll get you some water." Murphy waved her hand. Although Murphy was resting, she never slacked off. Every morning, she would wake up and practice her voice, rain or shine. Now that she had found a partner with the same goal, she would even pull Yang Yi to practice together. Of course, Yang Yi's practice was not as much as Murphy's. When Yang Yi finished practicing and went downstairs to prepare lunch, Murphy's clear singing voice could still be heard in the kitchen. "Your existence deep in my mind." However, this was not Murphy's singing voice. It was Yang Yi's phone ringing. Yang Yi took out his mobile phone and glanced at it. When he found that it was Shen Xinyu, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. Calling so early in the morning, was there something urgent? However, if Zhang Lang had something urgent to look for him, it would be a big deal. Yang Yi was a little worried about his brothers and quickly picked it up. However, when he heard Shen Xinyu's hearty laughter on the phone, Yang Yi's hanging heart was relieved. "Did you take the wrong medicine early in the morning?" Yang Yi was more casual with Shen Xinyu. He smiled and said, "You called so early and you're laughing here." "Ha ha ha, sorry, jet lag, we just came back from abroad. When we heard that you had a wedding, we didn't even have time to put down our things and called you." "Wait a minute," Shen Xinyu shouted on the other end of the phone. "Come on, I'm going to turn on the speaker." After a while, a group of people screamed from Shen Xinyu's side, "Old Yang, congratulations on stepping into the grave of love. However, without marriage, love will die without a burial ground. Hee hee, I wish you a happy marriage." Yang Yi could tell that they were all Zhang Lang's brothers. Luo Zongxing, Yu Xiaotian, and the others' voices were mixed in. He was a little moved and smiled. "Thank you, everyone." "Hey, you said you got married in such a hurry. You didn't say anything in advance. You made a sudden attack and bumped into us going abroad for the competition. We couldn't even attend your wedding," Shen Xinyu said. Yang Yi knew that Zhang Lang would once again represent the entire army in the World Special Forces competition this year. When he called Shen Xinyu and the others to tell them about his marriage, the brothers who stayed behind told him about it. Yang Yi smiled and said, "Plans can't keep up with changes. Sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. I can understand that you can't participate. Don't talk about going abroad for the competition. Even if there's nothing important, you can't ask for leave." A soldier's leave was not casually applied, let alone Zhang Lang, who had to be on standby at all times. "Hee hee," Shen Xinyu laughed without any awkwardness. "It's good that you have the heart, brother," Yang Yi said as he seasoned the porridge. "Yang Yi, when are you coming back to take a look?" Shen Xinyu suddenly said. For some reason, there was a hint of sadness in his voice. "Although it's impossible for you to come back and continue to fight side by side with us, we all miss you very much. After so many years, we all hope that you can come home and take a look." Yang Yi was silent for a while before he slowly said, "I understand. After a while, I'll take some time to visit you guys. The main thing is that old Luo is about to retire. He, that old bastard, has reported it and the higher-ups have approved it. He might leave Zhang Lang in June." Shen Xinyu was probably afraid that old Luo would hear him and lowered his voice. Yang Yi was not surprised by this news. The last time they came to Jiang City, Luo Zongxing had expressed this intention. This is also a good thing. Old Luo has been in Zhanlang for so many years. It's time for him to be promoted. It's a good thing for his personal development and for Zhanlang's development. Yang Yi softly advised. I know. I'm not a little girl. I'm not reluctant to leave and cry. Shin Xingyu shouted unhappily. I just feel that you guys are leaving Zhanlang one by one. It's just that I feel bad. Come back early and take a look while the brothers are still here. Chapter 495. Shocking. He's the one who wrote the song for Chen Yijie. When Yang Yi moved house over the weekend, an unknown Tianxiang employee leaked the news. The news that Chen Yijie was recording a new song was exposed on a new media website that specialized in gossip. The shocking headline attracted a lot of attention and clicks. If the non-mainstream singer, Zhu Jie's announcement of his new song received widespread attention on the internet, but it didn't cause much of a stir in reality, then the news about the real superstar Chen Yijie couldn't possibly remain silent. Once it was exposed, the mainstream media scrambled to report it. What's more, according to the news, the one who wrote the song for Chen Yijie was Mu Xiang, who was also Yang Yi, who had been in the limelight this year. The two had a close relationship and Chen Yijie had even attended Yang Yi's wedding as his best man. The collaboration between Yang Yi and Chen Yijie wasn't unexpected, but it was enough to make people look forward to it. What song did Yang Yi write for Chen Yijie? Although Tianxiang told the reporters that it was not convenient to disclose it for the time being, it was inevitable that the media would speculate. Could it be the two songs that Yang Yi and Murphy sang before? However, I Want to Sing Me to You, and Today You Will Marry Me, didn't quite fit Chen Yijie's style. Moreover, the fans had already decided that these two songs had to be sung by Yang Yi and Murphy, so this speculation wasn't very likely. It was just a trick that the media put together to make up the number of words. However, one media outlet speculated that it might be University Days, which was the song that the male lead of Fairy Tale sang at the school's freshman party, but didn't release. It was a folk song, so Chen Yijie might be able to sing it. Not only did the media speculate, but the netizens also discussed it. However, as they talked, the topic changed from Chen Yijie to Yang Yi. How long will this guy wait before he's willing to release his first song? After all, there were only a few tens of thousands of people who attended Murphy's concert. Most of them only knew who he was. They knew that his singing was not bad, but had not heard his voice. Just like urging him to get married, netizens gathered under Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting. Yang Yi's latest complaint about Shishi letting the puppy dirty the sheets on the bed, urging Yang Yi to get married. Don't be busy showing off your baby every day. Hurry up and come up with a song. It's not that you can't show off your baby, but you should at least show off your front face. It's not like we don't know Shishi. Your child with Murphy is so beautiful. Can't you bear to show it to us? Looking forward to the stars and the moon, Yang Beige. Do you want us to wait until we are old to have the honor of hearing your song? It wasn't just Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting. Murphy's micro-broadcasting, which had been updated more frequently recently, was also occupied by netizens who came to watch. Goddess, it doesn't matter if you want to recuperate, but it seems like you are the one who is pregnant, not your husband. Hurry up and ask him to come out and sing. Auntie Mo, don't hide Uncle Yang at home. Good things should be shared with everyone. Some netizens teased. Perhaps because the netizens were urging her, Murphy updated a new micro-broadcasting, which made the netizens feel refreshed. Everyone, please be considerate of Yang Yi. Recently, he has to take care of Shishi and accompany me for a prenatal checkup. He also has to cook delicious food according to my unpredictable appetite. It's already very hard for him. However, in order to thank everyone for their support and blessings, Yang Yi told me that he will try to release a new song next month. Under the micro-broadcasting, Murphy routinely posted a few photos. The first was taken by Murphy during her prenatal checkup, which she asked Yang Yi to take. The remaining 5 photos were photos of delicious food taken by Murphy. This subtle bragging immediately made the netizens explode, and they all started to comment. Is this really the food made by Yang Yi? If it weren't for the homely dining table and cutlery, I would have thought that it was made by a chef outside. No wonder Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting account is called Shishi's Chef. I thought that he was just praising himself. I didn't expect that he really has good culinary skills. My Shishi is so lucky. He can write songs and novels, and he can sing. Now he has high-level culinary skills. Who can tell me? Is there anything that Yang Yi can't do? I really think that Murphy is very lucky. Can you give me a dozen of such a husband who can cook? The netizens were envious, jealous, and hateful. Fortunately, Murphy revealed that Yang Yi would release a new song next month, which calmed their restless hearts. They all began to look forward to it. On Monday, Yang Yi did accompany Murphy for a prenatal checkup. However, it was only 2 months. The prenatal checkup didn't reveal anything other than ensuring that Murphy was healthy. Let's change our perspective to Springfield Kindergarten. Today, Shishi and Lan Xian were very excited. Under the envious eyes of their friends, the two of them told them that Shishi had moved to Lan Xian's house to be her neighbor. Then the two of them played together for 2 days. Steamed Bun is very cute. He likes to play with me. Hee hee, there are many rooms in my house. I can play hide and seek with Xian Air. Chun Shiryun couldn't help but say, hide and seek needs many people to be fun. It's not fun with 2 people. She seemed to have opened up the conversation of the other friends. Nan Jiaoyu said enviously, Shishi Xian Air, I also want to be your neighbor, but my house is too far away. I can't play with you. Shishi said enthusiastically, Jiaoyu, you can move here. My papa sold a big house and then moved here. Nan Jiaoyu said awkwardly, but our family has no money. My father is sick and spent a lot of money. Then my mother doesn't buy me toys. It sounded so pitiful. Without toys, how could Nan Jiaoyu live normally? Shishi blinked her big eyes and said, then I'll lend you money. My papa gave me pocket money. He put it in my little piggy pot. I can do it too. I have money too. Lan Xian didn't save money by herself. She didn't know that Lan Hao Kai had actually set up a trust fund for her. However, the little girl remembered that there was a beautiful foreign note in her drawer. She thought that it was very colorful, so she asked her father for it. I don't have money. My mother doesn't give me money. She said that if I want to buy something, I can just tell my father. Young Luoqi said awkwardly. I have 2 yuan. I'll buy a big house for you. Chun Shiryun was the most straightforward. She took out 2 1 yuan notes from her pocket. It was also her pocket money, but Chun Shiryun often spent it to buy candy. Can I buy a house with 2 yuan? Chun Shiryun knew that 2 yuan could buy a bag of candy, but she had no idea about the price of a house. However, she still showed a generous attitude. Thank you, Shishi. Thank you, Xian Air. Nan Jiaoyu didn't take it. He politely thanked his friends, shook his head, and said, but I can't take it. My mother said that I can't take other people's money. The crisis of the piggy bank in the villa was temporarily resolved. Okay then. Chun Shiryun stuffed the money back into her trouser pocket. She said indifferently, I don't want to go to school. I want to go to Shishi's house to play. Nan Jiaoyu, you can come too. I want to go and play. Nan Jiaoyu murmured enviously but hesitantly. Okay. Shishi clapped her hands happily and said, I have a swimming pool at home. My father said that when the weather gets hot, we can go swimming. Shishi, I want to swim too. Yang Luoqi said enviously. But you can also come to my house to play. Lan Xian said with some jealousy, my swimming pool is super big and it's super fun. Hee hee, let's go to Xian Air's house. Xian Air's house is also fun. Shishi said indifferently. But I still want to go to Shishi's house because Shishi's father can cook delicious food. Chun Shiryun said. That's right. Lan Xian's eyes lit up. The foodie immediately changed her mind. Then don't come to my house to play. I want to go to Shishi's house to eat delicious food. There's a big cake and a lot of delicious food. I want to compete with you to see who can eat more. Chun Shiryun said to Lan Xian. Of course I can eat more. Lan Xian said unconvinced. The children's ability to change the topic was even better. Chapter 496. Murphy's announcement on micro-broadcasting was not to fool the fans. It just so happened that the preparations for the signing event happened. Yang Yi took some time to record the song in the recording studio of Huai Brothers Company. In fact, the signboard of Phoebe Studio should be hung. But now Murphy's contract has not yet ended. In order to avoid trouble, the studio has not been officially registered. However, the recording of this song started on Tuesday, which caused some controversy. Yang Yi, isn't the prelude of this song too simple? Not to mention the integration of the human voice. Won't this kind of beat make people misunderstand that it's too frivolous? Jin Yingming, who was the producer, said with a frown. However, this time, Yang Yi's arrangement style changed again, which made Jin Yingming happy and worried. He was happy that Yang Yi boldly made a change. For a musician, to appreciate Yang Yi's new arrangement style was not only a very enjoyable thing, but also new inspiration. But playing music was one thing, and selling music was another. Jin Yingming was very worried about the market's ability to accept. If the arrangement was too unique, it would be rejected by the market. There was no need to learn too much from this precedent. Teacher Jin, I think it's very good. Simply don't use a sandhammer, just snap your fingers. Just like a beatbox, the human voice completes the prelude transition. Murphy sat next to Yang Yi and put forward a different opinion. Since this song is for the fans, we have to do something special and boldly integrate new elements. Murphy couldn't stay at home, so she came to the company with Yang Yi. In the early stages of pregnancy, when she needed to rest, Murphy was not allowed to record songs by herself because she was too immersed in the recording state, and it was easy for her to be immersed in it and forget to rest. But there was no problem with accompanying Yang Yi to record songs. Murphy just watched from the side and occasionally gave some advice. Yang Yi once thought that his love for music was at the level of a fever, but compared with Murphy, Yang Yi really felt inferior. After arriving at the recording studio, Murphy's whole mental state was refreshed, and she volunteered to help Yang Yi with the harmony. However, Murphy and Jin Yingming's opinions did conflict. Murphy's consideration stopped at the level of playing music, while Jin Yingming, because he had experienced too many failures, was very rational and found a balance between the professionalism of music and the acceptance of the market. Yang Yi pondered Jin Yingming and Murphy's suggestions for a while, but he was still a little undecided. But seeing them arguing fiercely, he smiled and said, "It doesn't matter, old Jin. You can go back and try a new arrangement. Today, we'll first record according to Murphy's suggestion and see the effect. When yours comes out, we'll do a comparison." If it were any other producer, they might have just quit. However, Jin Yingming's character was not strong. On the contrary, he felt that Yang Yi, as the boss, respected his opinion. He nodded gratefully. "Yang Yi, didn't you tell me at home that you can also do an electronic version of the arrangement?" Murphy said excitedly. "That's more frivolous, I don't like it." Yang Yi shook his head. "It doesn't matter. You can make it and let us listen to it. Maybe it can give Teacher Jin some special inspiration," Murphy said. Yang Yi looked at Jin Yingming and saw that Jin Yingming was also very interested, so he nodded with a smile. Discussions about music always made people forget about the time. If Yang Yi had not set the alarm to pick up Shishi, they might have been in a heated discussion until midnight. In the evening, Yang Yi and Murphy picked up Shishi, but they did not go directly to the villa. Instead, they went to the coffee shop. Today was Ding Xiang's birthday. Yang Yi and Guozi had been planning for a long time to celebrate Ding Xiang's birthday, but they did not show anything strange in front of Ding Xiang, including Yang Yi and the others. They also helped to keep it a secret and did not leak any information. Therefore, when Yang Yi and his family returned to the coffee shop in the evening, Ding Xiang was a little surprised. She thought that Yang Yi and his family had left something upstairs. She wiped her hands and took out her keys to help. "Ding Xiang, come here." Mo Fei smiled, took Ding Xiang, who was still thin, and took her to the front of the bar, let her face the bar with her back to everyone, and then said, "Can I trouble you to close your eyes first?" Ding Xiang was confused, but she still did as Murphy said. She had a vague feeling that something was going to happen. She did not see it. After Murphy made sure that she closed her eyes, she made an okay gesture to Yang Huan next to her. Yang Huan ran to the door and gestured for Guozi, who was hiding outside, to come in. Guazi was carrying a big box in his hand. Yang Yi also went to help. He opened the box in a hurry and took out the cake inside. Lin Mu, and his girlfriend Ranjin, helped to open the candles in the bag and gave them to Yang Yi and Guazi. The five of them put the candles on the cake. Is it done? Ding Xiang asked, a little confused. Wait. Murphy turned to look at her and said, Don't open your eyes yet. Ding Xiang felt very strange in her heart, but she still remained motionless. She was leaning on the table, licking her lips and looking at the big cake. However, she knew what her father was doing, so she did not say anything. Moreover, when the young lady heard Ranjin clicking on the lighter, she shrank her head and raised her little finger to shush the other party. It seemed that she was even more nervous. Finally, the cake was arranged. Lin Mu quickly walked back to the piano and sat down to get ready. Yang Huan took a paper crown and put it on Ding Xiang's head. Murphy smiled and turned Ding Xiang around. After Ranjin turned off the light, she said, Okay, Ding Xiang, you can open your eyes now. Ding Xiang opened her eyes and saw a big cake in front of her. The candlelight was flickering on the cake, and behind her, Yang Yi and Guazi were smiling. At the same time, Lin Mu played the birthday song. It was the same song that Yang Yi played on Xixi birthday last year. 1, 2, 3. Yang Yi directed. Cece's little figure was hidden in the shadows, but her clear voice could be heard. Happy birthday to you. The little girl sang 4 lines, which was just one section. Then everyone sang the birthday song to Ding Xiang. Under the candlelight, Ding Xiang still looked surprised, but there were tears in her eyes. This girl did not cry. She would only be so emotional when she was deeply touched. Ding Xiang, sister, sister, sister. Finally, after various titles, everyone laughed and said in unison, Happy birthday to you. Ding Xiang choked. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much. I don't even remember my birthday today. Thank you for remembering. This is so expensive. Sigh, I don't know what to say. Ding Xiang never celebrated her birthday. She used to live a hard life. Every day was tiring. To Ding Xiang, birthdays were just numbers that needed to be filled in when doing registration. She did not expect that she would be able to celebrate her birthday this year. So many friends had secretly prepared so many surprises for her. Ding Xiang was so touched that she did not know how to express her feelings. The credit goes to Huan Huan and Xiaogua. They reminded us. Murphy said with a smile. Young Huan was not greedy. She waved her hand and said with a smile. It wasn't me. Xiaogua told me. I still don't know how he knew. I think he has ulterior motives. Guazi complained. What do you mean by ulterior motives? I have a good memory. I saw Sister Ding Xiang's ID before, and I remember it. Still, thank you, Ding Xiang said quickly. Don't say so much. Hurry up and make a wish and blow out the candles. It's your birthday. You should be happy. Come, Sister Ding Xiang, smile. Guazi said with a smile. Everyone laughed out loud. Ding Xiang also wiped her tears and smiled embarrassedly. Ding Xiang did not know how to make a wish in front of the candles. She closed her eyes and thought sincerely, I'm sorry. Please forgive my greed. I have 3 wishes. First, I hope that every good friend of mine can be healthy and have everything go well. Second, I hope that my grandmother can get rid of her illness and live a long and healthy life. Third, Ding Xiang paused. I hope that my brothers and sisters in the village can study hard and have a bright future. I hope that the teachers in the school who are paid will not leave the children. After making her wish, Ding Xiang blew out the 21 candles. The lights came back on. Ding Xiang, who was standing in front of the cake, smiled shyly. Her eyes were still red. Chapter 497. Everyone was drunk, but Xixi was the only one sober. After Ding Xiang blew out the candles, the group of people laughed and cheered. Only Cece stared at the big cake. She raised her little head, looked at her father and whispered, Can I eat the cake now? Guazi answered her question. He took out a box wrapped in ribbons from behind him and said, Don't eat the cake yet. Let's give you the presents first. Presents? Ding Xiang was already satisfied. She waved her hand and said, "No need for presents. I'm already very happy that everyone can celebrate my birthday with me. Really, I don't want anyone to spend more money." Yang Yi and Murphy also took out their presents. Murphy took Ding Xiang's hand and said, "It's okay. We've already prepared presents. Just accept them. Take Xiaoguo for example. He can't take back the presents he bought for you, right?" Yang Huan said with a smile, "Sister Ding Xiang, don't worry. We didn't spend too much money. I know your personality, so I asked everyone to prepare presents for you. They won't be too expensive, and they'll try their best to make them by hand to express our feelings for you." Ding Xiang took the presents with hesitation. Time to open the presents. With Yang Huan's shout, everyone gathered around. Cici, who was looking forward to eating the cake, curiously went to Sister Ding Xiang's side. The first to open was Yang Huan's present. Yang Huan gave Ding Xiang a glass jar full of colorful paper cranes. "My present is mainly for its beauty. It'll look good on the bookshelf," Yang Huan introduced. "Of course, I also wish Sister Ding Xiang all the best." Then it was Lin Mu's and Ranjin's presents. Although their presents were wrapped together, they were given separately. Lin Mu's present was a small teapot, which was a specialty of their hometown, while Ranjin gave Ding Xiang a knitted hat that she had knitted herself. "Mu's clumsy. He really doesn't know how to make any handicrafts." Ranjin smiled and explained, "So I asked him to buy you a small teapot. Although we are in a coffee shop, I think it's good for your health to drink tea occasionally." "Thank you, Senior Apprentice Sister Ranjin and Big Brother Lin." Ding Xiang was touched as she received the gift. Yang Yi and Murphy only gave one gift, but it was made by their family of 3. Ding Xiang opened the package and saw that it was a hand-carved photo frame. Instead of flowers, it was a picture drawn by Shishi. "I drew this." When Shishi saw the gift, she remembered that she had participated in the making of it. The little girl leaned against her father and pointed at the gift sheepishly. But these were made by Mom." Shishi's drawing was rough, but one could still vaguely see that it was outside a coffee shop. The background was a 2-story building, and a group of people were standing in a row. Murphy's drawing was the flower bed. She made it with colorful petals. In order not to fade easily, Murphy made the petals into specimens. "Who are these?" Ding Xiang asked, pointing at the stickmen on the picture. "This is Papa, this is Mom, this is me, and this is little Auntie, this is Uncle Xiaogua, this is Sister Ding Xiang." Shishi started to count them one by one. Everyone's gifts were not expensive, but they were all full of sincerity. Ding Xiang liked all of them very much. Finally, it was Guazi's turn to present his gift. When Comrade Gua saw Ding Xiang pick up the box he gave, he became inexplicably nervous. He coughed dryly and said, "Ahem, well, it's not early anymore. Sister Ding Xiang, why don't we eat the cake first? You can open my gift when you go back later." However, his words were unanimously rejected by everyone. "How can we? There's only one left. We have to open it," Yang Yi said with a smile. Even Cici, who had been gluttonous to the point that she couldn't move her eyes away, shouted excitedly at this moment, "I want to open the present." She could not wait and wanted to pull the ribbon on the gift, but Yang Yi held her hand and shook his head at her with a reproachful look. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Ding Xiang opened the gift box and took out a smaller gift box from it. Suddenly, the atmosphere became tense. Guazi pointed at it awkwardly. "You have to open it again." Ding Xiang opened it and took out an even smaller box. Yang Huan finally could not hold it in anymore. She laughed and said, "Xiaogua, is this the Melrose Matryoshka doll you gave her?" "Not a typo." Guazi waved his hand with a red face and said, "No, this is the last one. I'm not lying." Ding Xiang still tore it open. Then she was stunned. "What is it?" Yang Yi could not hold back his curiosity and asked, "Don't tell me it's another Matryoshka doll?" Yang Huan was more impatient. She could not help but take a closer look. "Hey, it's a hair clip. It's quite pretty." Ding Xiang took out the gift and everyone saw its true appearance. It was a crystal hair clip. "Didn't you say we can't give expensive gifts?" Yang Huan asked in confusion. "Why did you buy such an expensive crystal hair clip?" Guazi quickly waved his hand and said, "It's not crystal. It's an imitation of crystal. It's actually transparent plastic and not expensive. I bought it from a boutique. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said with a smile, Sister Juan, you said it's best if it's handmade, so I got a few more boxes. It's probably a handmade gift. Guazi's words amused everyone until they started laughing. However, Ding Xiang did not laugh. She recognized the crystal hair clip. It was the one she had been reluctant to buy when she and Guazi went to buy Murphy's birthday gift last year. You still remember it? Ding Xiang blushed as she picked up the crystal hair clip and said shyly. Guazi chuckled and said, Didn't I tell you? My memory is very good. You remember it. Sister Ding Xiang, did you tell Xiao Gua that you like this hair clip? Yang Huan caught the main point of their conversation and looked at them with a gossipy expression. Ding Xiang shyly waved her hand and said, No, I didn't say that I like this hair clip. You don't like it? Guazi asked with disappointment. It's not that I don't like it. Ding Xiang had to deal with Guazi again. Then you like it? Yang Huan said with a smile. It's okay, Sister Ding Xiang. You don't have to explain. I understand. Yang Huan took the crystal hair clip from Ding Xiang's hand and turned Ding Xiang's face to put it on. She then said with a smile, I think it's very compatible. Murphy also gave her a thumbs up and said with a smile, It's very beautiful. She turned her head and said to Yang Yi, Hey Yang Yi, did you notice that Ding Xiang's skin is much fairer than when we first met last year? She used to be tanned and thin. Now not only does her skin look better, but her figure is also much better. With this hair clip, she will become a great beauty. Although Mo Fei's words were somewhat exaggerated, what she said was not wrong. Ding Xiang's skin was not white, but it was still a healthy wheat color, and her round face also had a unique wild beauty. Ding Xiang was so shy that she did not dare to raise her head. She picked up the plastic knife and said, Hey, let's eat the cake quickly. Shishi is hungry. After opening the gifts, Shishi's attention was attracted by the cake again. When she heard Sister Ding Xiang's words, she waved her hand happily and quickly sat down with a small fork. She said clearly, Eat the cake, I want it, Sister Ding Xiang, hurry. Okay, I'll cut the biggest piece for you. Ding Xiang finally changed the topic. She smiled and cut a big piece of cake for the little girl. I like Sister Ding Xiang the most. Shishi looked at the cake in front of her and said happily, Don't forget. Murphy reminded her. I know. Thank you, Sister Ding Xiang. The little girl was very sweet. After the fun, Yang Yi took Murphy and Shishi back to the villa. Lin Muan and Ranjin helped to clean up the mess and left. Guazi was also ready to leave. Ding Xiang walked him out. Yang Huan was nowhere to be found. Little Gua, thank you, Ding Xiang suddenly said when Guazi was leaving. Guazi turned around and saw Ding Xiang wearing a crystal hairpin. Her eyes looked even clearer under the street light. What are you thanking me for? Guazi smiled. Sister Ding Xiang, you helped me a lot when you were my manager. I don't know how to thank you. Work hard in the future. I made a wish. I hope that your dreams will come true. I also hope that you can become the best actor. Ding Xiang said. Of course, I'm very confident, Guazi said energetically, clenching his fist. Chapter 498. Before Murphy's pregnancy, Yang Yi usually had nothing to do at home. However, after Murphy's pregnancy, Yang Yi unknowingly became busy. It was all because of Murphy. Those who approached Yang Yi were his own business. For example, this great director Chen Fengchen. Soldier's Assault is about to be completed. As an original author, aren't you going to visit me? The old man's voice sounded a little bitter. Director Chen, when I signed the contract with you, I promised not to interfere with your filming. If I visit you, wouldn't that be looking down on your ability? Yang Yi gestured to Murphy and Jin Yingming, then walked out of the recording studio with his phone. Am I such a petty person? Chen Fengchen pretended to be annoyed. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, Chen Fengchen finally got to the point. Little Yang, I heard that you have a book called Prison Break. It's quite popular. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He frowned and said, Director Chen, you haven't finished filming Soldier's Assault, And you don't have a clue about drawing sword. Are you thinking about my other book? If that was the case, Yang Yi's opinion of Chen Fengchen would be greatly reduced. He hated greedy people. Haha, why would I? Your 2 dramas are enough to keep me busy for a few years. How would I have the energy to take on another drama? Maybe I'll have to retire after filming Drawing Sword. Chen Fengchen joked. What do you mean? Central TV has a channel called the Movie Channel. It broadcasts a lot of foreign translated films, and Global Pictures cooperates with the station in this regard. Chen Fengchen seemed to be talking about something irrelevant. However, when Yang Yi heard the name Global Pictures, he understood. Global Pictures had not given up. Not only did they entangle with the negotiation team of Sahara Publishing, but they also followed Yang Yi's work and found Chen Fengchen. I heard that the CEO of Global Pictures in China is called Su Zhongwei. He's a Chinese national CEO. Sure enough, he's well versed in China's national conditions. He's already using his connections. Yang Yi smiled faintly and asked, Director Chen, did the people from Global Pictures ask you to be their lobbyist? Hee, I can't be considered a lobbyist. They don't have enough face for me to be their lobbyist. Chen Fengchen said proudly. It's just that one of the leaders of the TV station came looking for me and asked me to pass on a message. He hopes that you can focus on the global film industry. Out of gratitude, I'll pass on the message to you. After saying that, Chen Fengchen continued. But don't take it to heart. Just do what you have to do. Yang Yi was a little surprised. Puzzled, he asked. If I do what I should do, won't it affect you? Chen Fengchen was amused. He said, Little Yang, aren't you underestimating me? In any case, I, Chen Fengchen, am an evergreen of Central TV, a director of the Chinese Cultural Union, and the vice president of the Chinese Television Association. How can it affect me? Chen Fengchen had not told Yang Yi about his other official identity. Old directors of his age basically had an official identity. They were either from a film studio or from a military and political art troupe. Chen Fengchen belonged to the latter. His rank in the army was equivalent to that of a deputy division commander. Although he didn't have any real power, he was still an official. Yang Yi was stunned when he heard that. He was a little confused. If that's the case, why not say it? Why did he have to beat around the bush for so long? Don't worry, little Yang. Not to mention that this matter won't affect me. It won't affect you at all. With me around, no one will dare to hold back on these 2 shows. Chen Fengchen said boldly as if he wanted to protect Yang Yi. Thank you, Director Chen. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he still underestimated Chen Fengchen. After Yang Yi thanked him, Chen Fengchen immediately followed up and said, You don't have to thank me. If you really want to thank me, then seriously consider the request I made to you last year. How about you participate in the promotional activities for Soldiers' Assault? So his real motive was this a trick? Yang Yi was a little speechless. No, you only invited me to participate in the press conference for the completion of the movie. Is that so? Sigh, I'm old now, so I can't remember clearly. It's fine, it's the same. This book was written by you. And the script was also read by you. No matter what, it's your blood, sweat, and tears. You also hope that it can receive more attention and love, right? Chen Fengchen joked about this and that. After talking for God knows how long, Yang Yi finally returned to the recording studio and casually mentioned it to Murphy. Then did you agree? Murphy asked curiously. Do you want me to agree? Yang Yi asked back. Fortunately, Jining Ming went to the pantry to get some water and fruit at this time, avoiding a round of dog food. Murphy nodded, her eyes sparkling as she said, I also hope that you can receive everyone's recognition. Murphy knew that Yang Yi was very lazy and didn't strive to improve. Although Murphy didn't usually ask Yang Yi to do things that he didn't want to do, in her heart, Murphy still hoped that Yang Yi could be like her, be a star that didn't fight for anything and enjoy the fun of music together. Then they wouldn't be too busy, and they could take a vacation together, and live their happy lives together. To sum it up, there was only one word. Step in step. There were too many examples in the entertainment industry where people came together because of love, but because of different steps, they couldn't understand each other and eventually fell apart. Yang Yi rubbed Murphy's head and said with a smile, "You guessed right. I promised him so that he wouldn't keep thinking about it." Yang Yi promised Chen Fengchen because of a change in mentality. In the past, he was worried that it would affect his normal life after being exposed by the media. But now that it had been exposed, it didn't seem to have a big impact. After all, he was rich and could afford a luxurious villa. On the contrary, he didn't have to hide it anymore, and his life was more open. Yang Yi was also happy and relaxed. "Now I suddenly realize that you're more like a big star than I am." Murphy hugged Yang Yi's waist, pouted, and said coquettishly, "There's a signing event and a press conference. If you're not at home, what should I do?" Yang Yi rubbed Murphy's head and said with a smile, "Basically, I'll be at home. I told Director Chen that I can attend the press conference, but it has to be held in Jiangcheng. Then, the signing event will be held in another city next month. I can bring you and Shishi along. After the signing event, we can take a stroll in that city to see the scenery and try the local snacks. I don't think that we're going to work, but for our honeymoon," Yang Yi said with a smile as he hugged Murphy. "You said it yourself. You have to bring me along." Murphy leaned in Yang Yi's embrace like a child, clinging on to him and asking for a guarantee. "Yes, I have everything planned out. Look, other than Yangqing, Shanghai, and Beijing, there are also inland cities like Chang and Chengdu and Spring. They are all very famous tourist cities and food cities," Yang Yi said with a smile. He also had this idea in mind when he chose these locations. When Yang Yi went out to work, how could he bear to leave his wife and child at home and let them eat in a restaurant? Nodding her head sweetly, Murphy said, "It's the same for Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Beijing. Although I often go to these places, it's for work. I don't have many opportunities to visit them." The lives of celebrities were indeed out of their control. However, Yang Yi and Murphy were about to set up their own studio, and they wanted to be different celebrities. Chapter 499. A week later in Guangzhou, Mu Yuqing was humming a song as he walked out of his boss's office. He called his assistant over. "Xiao Fan, I won't be around for the whole day tomorrow. Everything else has been arranged, except for the R2M2 program testing. Help me keep an eye on it and record any problems." Xiao Fan nodded as he recorded. When Mu Yuqing was done, he smiled and said, "Manager Mu, you're not taking a day off to go on a blind date again, are you?" Most programmers were otakus, and Mu Yuqing was one of them. He was in his 30s, but he was still single. Recently, he was forced by his family to go on blind dates. Xiao Fan was still young and didn't know what it was like to be worried. He was still teasing Mu Yuqing, not knowing that Mu Yuqing's present could be his future. "Taking a day off to go on a blind date? Do you think I'm that bored?" Waving his hand, Mu Yuqing was in a good mood as he continued. "I'm going to attend Yang Yi's signing event. That fellow finally agreed to hold a signing event. And his first stop is in Yangqing City. How rare." Mu Yuqing was still beaming with joy as he added, "Xiao Fan, let me tell you, I've been invited to have lunch with him tomorrow afternoon." "No way? Yang Yi, the superstar, is treating you to lunch?" Xiao Fan didn't believe him. "You don't believe me? I'll show you the photo later. Alright, I'll leave first. I still have something to do." After Mu Yuqing finished speaking, he excitedly grabbed his backpack and walked out. Today, there were many fans who weren't from Yangcheng who came a day earlier. There were even some who came from the northeast to join in the fun at the signing event. Mu Yuqing and a few of his buddies who got along well with each other agreed to meet up tonight. There were many authentic restaurants in Guangzhou that had been open for many years. There were simple roadside shops that were similar to street food stalls, and there were also luxurious hotels. The restaurant that Yang Yi brought Murphy and Shishi to eat was a typical roadside shop. It was so simple that it looked like an old private building. The narrow and long facade on the first floor had been remodeled. The inside was filled with square tables and wooden chairs. The lights had to be turned on during the day, but the dim yellow light made it seem more warm. "I heard from Fu Jun that the rice noodle roll in this restaurant is more authentic." Yang Yi smiled and handed the molded menu to Murphy. Murphy didn't have a good appetite now. Not only did she hate some of the food that she used to love, but she also often felt nauseous. Her pregnancy reaction was a little big. When they arrived in Yangcheng, it was rare for her to suddenly say that she wanted to eat rice noodle rolls, so Yang Yi brought her out. There are so many people here. Murphy took the menu and looked around worriedly. There were people coming and going. Even though they were sitting closer to the center, she couldn't help but feel nervous when someone passed by the table. She shifted her butt. She also wanted to look at the menu, but it was filled with words. The young lady could not understand them. She could only recognize a few words and numbers. Yang Yi lowered his voice and said to Murphy, "It's fine. These old restaurants are like this. Business is booming every day. But look, everyone is busy eating. After eating, they will pay the bill and leave. They won't sit here and look at us." Furthermore, when they came out, they had put on some small disguises. As long as they didn't pay special attention, they wouldn't be able to recognize them. And who would pay attention to a family of 3 that came out to eat? Murphy ordered a set of barbecued pork noodle rolls. The beef and shrimp noodle rolls were actually selling better, but Murphy didn't have any appetite for these 2 for the time being. Yang Yi ordered beef and shrimp noodle rolls for himself and Shishi. However, Shishi was also a little picky. After the dishes were served, she pouted and said, "Papa, I don't want to eat rice noodle rolls." "Then what do you want to eat?" Yang Yi asked puzzledly. "Do you want to eat porridge? There's porridge here too." "I don't want to eat porridge. I want to eat that." Shishi turned her head and saw the sugar water on the next table. A girl was drinking mango coconut milk sago with big meatballs in it. Looking at it, she felt very tempted. Shishi couldn't help but lick her small tongue. There was no sugar water in this restaurant. Yang Yi had to ask the girl. It turned out that she bought it in the next room. After eating the rice noodle rolls, she would order dessert. "After we finish eating, let's go next door to drink the sugar water, okay?" Yang Yi came back and discussed with Shishi. "But I want to drink it." Shishi looked at her father pitifully and refused to give up. "But we can't drink other people's sugar water here." Yang Yi patiently explained, "You can eat some rice noodle rolls first, or Papa will buy you a bowl of lean meat porridge with century eggs in it." "I want to drink the sugar water." Cece wasn't that stubborn to begin with, but when she turned her head, she could see the young lady's expression of enjoyment as she drank the sweet water. She even saw the brightly colored mango coconut milk sago. The little girl was so greedy that she was about to drool. "Shishi, you can't be so willful." Yang Yi became serious. The little girl pursed her lips and lowered her head, feeling wronged. "You go buy it for her. I'll watch over here." Murphy pulled Yang Yi's hand and couldn't bear to say, "I want to eat rice noodle rolls, and you brought me all the way here to eat. Shishi just wants to drink some sugar water. You can't favor one and discriminate against the other." Shishi didn't understand the latter part of the sentence. The little girl's eyes were a little confused. Yang Yi looked at the pitiful little girl, shook his head, stood up, and said with a smile, "Okay. Let's go, Shishi. Papa will take you to buy the sugar water." "Really?" Shishi's cloudy mood suddenly turned sunny, and she smiled in surprise. "Really? Look at how happy you are. Isn't it just a bowl of sugar water?" Yang Yi couldn't help but smile and rub the little girl's head. "Hee Papa, let's go quickly. Mom is waiting for us." At this time, Cece became sensible again. She was a completely different person from the little girl who had insisted on drinking sugar water earlier. She stuffed her small hand into her father's big hand and let him lead her away. Not long after, Yang Yi and Shishi came back. They didn't encounter any difficulties, and Murphy wasn't recognized or just went out because of Yang Yi's absence. "I bought you taro sugar water." Yang Yi took out the packed sugar water and said to Murphy, "You can eat some later." Murphy didn't hate sweets because she was pregnant. On the contrary, she liked sweets because sweets could keep her happy. However, Murphy would try her best to control her desire. She couldn't eat too much sweets. If she ate too much sweets, she would get fat. She sipped her sago juice with a small spoon and couldn't help but look at her mother. Murphy's taro sugar water was also very tempting. The taro balls in it had 3 colors: yellow sweet potato taro balls, purple sweet potato taro balls, and white cassava taro balls. "Do you want some too?" Murphy saw her daughter's little eyes and laughed in her heart. She took a small bowl and said, "I'll share some with you." She nodded happily. Then, she watched her mother scoop out some taro balls and sugar water and said impatiently, "Mom, I want this, the purple one." Yang Yi took the opportunity to pick out the shrimps from the fresh shrimp rice noodle roll that belonged to him with chopsticks, and stuffed them into the little girl's mouth that was opened, because she was talking. She turned her head and looked at her father. Then, she felt that she was eating crispy and delicious shrimps, so she didn't say anything and chewed happily. In the end, the whole plate of fresh shrimp rice noodle roll was picked out by Yang Yi for Shi to eat, including some beef dipped in soy sauce. He could only eat the rest of the noodle roll. Chapter 500. The next day, Yangqing City's Hueda Plaza was unusually lively. People who came to the mall on the weekend curiously saw a long line of people neatly lined up in front of a stage that was temporarily set up. Of course, it was a signing event, so the big bookstore next to it had already clearly hung up banners. But what made people feel strange was that there were people of all ages and dressed in all kinds of clothes in the line. It was easy to explain why there were middle-aged people, or even old people who were dressed in high spirits. Maybe they were lining up for their children or grandchildren. But why were their children in the line? Could it be that the children were also lining up for their parents? Of course, their parents were also there, but the most excited were the children. Who exactly was this author Yang Yi? People who didn't pay much attention to entertainment news and literature couldn't help but have a strong interest in Yang Yi. At this moment, Yang Yi was in the lounge provided by the bookstore. He sat together with Murphy Shishi and Mo Shawan. Because it was Yang Yi's first time participating in such a large event, Murphy was worried that Yang Yi didn't have any experience, so she let Mo Shawan temporarily act as Yang Yi's agent to deal with some miscellaneous matters. "Do you want to come with me? It might be boring to stay in the lounge," Yang Yi asked. Murphy smiled and shook her head, saying, "No need. Today's stage belongs to you. I can't steal your limelight." "AI, what limelight? If you want it, then go ahead and take it." Yang Yi generously waved his hand. Murphy pointed to the TV in the lounge and smiled. "There's really no need. Didn't the organizer say that we can connect to the live recording signal here? I can also see your performance here. Of course, I think it will be boring, because the signing event is basically just signing." Yang Yi didn't insist, but at this moment, Shishi looked at her father with anticipation and said, "Papa, I want to play with Papa." "No, we can't disturb Dad's work." Murphy pulled her into his arms and said. Mo Shawan looked at her notes and said without looking up, "Shishi can go if she wants to. Isn't there a popular request from fans who want to see Shishi?" "That won't do. Shishi is too young. I'm worried about her in such a chaotic situation." Yang Yi waved his hand and said, "That's why I didn't choose this request. I can help take care of it. Anyway, I don't need to sign for you. I have nothing to do anyway." Mo Shawan put away the notebook with a smile and said, "Your signing event is too simple. You don't even have a group photo. It's much simpler than my sister's." Murphy looked at her daughter's eager look. She thought for a moment and said, "Shishi, do you really want to play? This is different from when Dad takes you to the amusement park or the zoo. Basically, you have to stay on that stage for several hours. There's no TV to watch, no toys to play with, and your dad doesn't have time to talk to you. He can only sit by himself." Shishi looked at her mother in a daze. The little girl was so stunned that her little mouth was slightly open. This posture, coupled with her delicate face, had a special kind of cute feeling. "You can accompany Mom in the lounge. Uncles and aunties will bring you a lot of delicious food. Then, after we watch Dad's performance, we can change the channel and show you cartoons," Murphy said with a smile. "Which choice do you think is more interesting?" After hearing her mother's words, Shishi waved her hands. She pouted and said, "Then I don't want to play with Dad. I want to be with Mom." After hearing Shishi's words, Yang Yi and Murphy couldn't help but look at each other and smile. Mo Shawan could only helplessly shake her head. Finally, Yang Yi walked out of the bookstore amidst the cheers of the fans. He waved to the fans as he walked onto the stage. Today he did not deliberately dress up, nor did he wear a suit. He only wore a set of casual clothes that he felt comfortable in. However, with his tall stature, he was like a clothes hanger. Even if it was casual clothes, Yang Yi looked extraordinary in them. When the fans saw Yang Yi with their own eyes, they couldn't help but show admiration in their eyes. That was because Yang Yi was indeed much taller than the staff next to him. Moreover, his figure didn't look out of shape, unlike most writers who were fat and otaku. Perhaps it was because they were all book fans. Although they were waving, they were very polite and were too embarrassed to shout. Yang Yi had the opportunity to make a fuss. He walked onto the stage, took the microphone and smiled slightly. "Are you still a little disappointed to see me? This average-looking man doesn't fit the fantasy in everyone's hearts? Yang Yi should be very handsome, more handsome than Michael in Prison Break, cooler than Li Yunlong in Drawing Sword, and more handsome than Yuzue in Yuzue?" The fans in the audience couldn't help but laugh. Their enthusiasm was finally aroused by Yang Yi's opening remarks. Many people shouted, "No!" There were also some bold female fans who laughed and shouted, "Yang Yi, you're already very handsome." "Thank you. I like friends like you who love to speak the truth." Yang Yi pointed at the girl who had shouted very loudly just now with a serious face. That caused another burst of laughter. "I still have to introduce myself. My name is Yang Yi, and I'm a writer. Of course, everyone knows that I've been given other titles by the media. But today here, in front of all of you lovely people, I'm just a writer." Yang Yi bowed deeply. The audience burst into thunderous applause. The book fans clapped excitedly. Although there were still many fans among them, most of them were book fans. The host of the scene came up. With him helping to control the scene, Yang Yi was happy to relax. The host first asked some questions that the book fans were more concerned about. First of all, everyone wants to know that your Prison Break and Yuzue are still serialized, but the plot seems to be nearing the end. I wonder if Yang Yi will continue to update these two novels? Will there be any other new plots? Book fans don't want them to end. Yang Yi nodded. He said frankly, "These two novels have indeed brought joy to many book fans, but I don't want the plot to drag on. When it's time to end, they will end. Let me calculate the time. The end date should be in the middle of this month or the end of this month. The end dates of the two books are different." Regarding this question, there was a burst of exclamations. "Then Yang Yi, do you have a new book plan? And in terms of the theme, will you continue to write suspense and mystery themes?" The host asked. "I have an idea for the new book, but I've been a little busy recently, so I haven't had time to write it. What I can tell everyone is that in terms of the theme, it's still in the suspense genre. However, I will be a little innovative. For example, I will incorporate some elements of web novels." Yang Yi said with a smile. "Web novels?" The host said excitedly. "What kind of elements? Cultivation? Cultivation? Or is it a fantasy world?" "Of course, this can't be revealed in advance. Everyone will know when you read it." Yang Yi smiled. Even so, the fans below the stage were excited. They felt that the big news that Yang Yi revealed himself was worth looking forward to. Regarding the new book, I have a small question. Because of the book Journey by White Knight, there are mixed reviews in the book critics and on the internet. Of course, it is undeniable that it is indeed a very excellent novel, but its plot is too depressing, so it has caused many people to dislike it. The host said, "Then in the new book Yang Yi, will you continue the style of Journey by White Knight?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Every book of mine has a different style, and it's the same for the new book. I've already expressed the style to my heart's content in Journey by White Knight. So naturally, I won't continue it in the new book. On the contrary, the new book's style will be more warm. Perhaps everyone will feel warm or positive after reading it." You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.